Over the next few videos, we're going to go screen by screen and improve the VoiceOver user experience for our app. So I got the AirPods in because I got to do this on my device, and VoiceOver is going to be saying stuff. I don't want this microphone to pick that up. So it's going to be a tricky edit. I'm going to have to like tie all these files together. We'll see how I pull it off. Okay, here we are. I'm holding my phone, but I'm going to put it up on the screen somehow. Again, the lifesaver will be turn on VoiceOver from Siri. Cool. Okay. So now my navigation is completely changed.
Map.
See,
no features visible. Use the rotor to access points of interest.
It's talking over me. How to navigate VoiceOver is you could just swipe right or left to swipe through a list of elements. Let's try that. So I'm swiping right.
Map pin.
Map pin.
Map pin. Map pin. Map pin. Map pin.
You see it's going through all of our map
Shows
pins.
more info.
Now, of course, map pin is not very descriptive, right? When I get to Chipotle,
map pin, map pin, map pin.
I would like it to say
shows more info.
Well, it says shows more info, letting it know it can be tapped. But I would like it to say map pin, Chipotle, 6 users checked in, right? That's a much better user experience. And on that note of user experience, I got ahead of myself a little bit. The whole point of this VoiceOver stuff is, as you can see, as I'm swiping through a list of elements, all these accessibility elements. And SwiftUI and the phone does a lot of this for us. You can see we haven't done anything on our own for accessibility, yet we get most of the way there. Of course, we can improve it because, like I said, saying map pin doesn't do anything. And another annoying thing is if you have like random unhelpful elements. For example, our DDG logo up at the top. Watch, I can swipe to that.
Map pin, 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 legal, link, DDG map logo.
See,
image,
okay.
ARG.
So you see, as I swipe through, I got to the DDG logo.
Bar. Select DDG map logo.
That doesn't
image.
do anything for the user. Now, this is a minor annoyance, but you can imagine if you had a bunch of these type of elements on the screen, the VoiceOver user has to swipe through and they're hearing all this like irrelevant stuff. So the idea to improve the user experience, and this is like big picture, not just this screen, this is for all of our screens, is to make it easily navigable and create elements that are very useful to our user. And you'll see this on future screens as we do it, but on our map screen, the two things I would want to fix are to hide our DDG logo image because it gives them no useful information from the elements. So as they're swiping through, it just skips over that. And then I would love to
DD legal link map pin, map pin, map pin.
Yeah, make our map pins.
Shows
you heard
more
it.
info.
Sorry if that's weird in the edit with the Siri talking over me, but you know, I would love our map pin again to say map pin Chipotle, 6 users checked in, or map pin Peggy Sue's, 0 users checked in, right? That's useful to the VoiceOver user. You're giving them all that information. So those are the two main things I want to fix on this screen. So let's talk about how to do that in the code. Okay, back in Xcode, we're going to talk about hiding the image first because that is actually pretty easy, but I want to back up a second and talk about like the big picture. Like I said, this accessibility stuff is very, very deep and a lot of work. So this is what I talk about, like doing just the basics and really tackling the major low-hanging fruit. So on our map screen, I would say the major low-hanging fruit was our map pins, right? Like map pin, map pin, map pin. It really hurts the user experience. We're going to talk about that in a second because there's a bug in SwiftUI with that. Push that off to the side. But I want to talk about like the idea of triaging. And I always use the analogy, right? It's like if you're a medic on a battlefield, you have wounded soldiers all around you. However, you know, some are severely wounded, some maybe just have a scratch, right? You have to use your time wisely. That's called triaging, right? Deciding which one to work on, right? You don't want to spend all your time working on the minor injuries when, you know, severely injured soldiers are over here, right? So you got to, you know, prioritize. And I'm using that analogy on this accessibility stuff, right? And I'm using these two as an example because swiping through the one extra element of our DDG logo, yes, minor annoyance. However, the severely wounded soldier would be our map pin. So I just kind of want to put that image in your head on how to prioritize which ones to solve. And that was two good examples of one that's a major issue and one that's kind of a minor annoyance. And again, remember, our app is relatively simple. If you're working on a much more complex app that has a ton of screens, you're going to have to triage a bit and really tackle the major issues. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that. But let's hide our image because it is relatively easy and there's two ways to do it. So let's talk about the overall way you can hide any element, not image specific. So our image, right, is this logo view, .shadow. Well, we can do .accessibility, see hint label. By the way, this accessibility and then with the label in parentheses, that is now deprecated. Now we have the full like accessibility label one and accessibility hint. These are the new ones that aren't deprecated. And you're going to see that a lot in SwiftUI just in general. is it's still so young that there's a lot of like syntax changes that are happening, but just wanted to point that out. So you can see we have like accessibility element, accessibility action, accessibility hint. Accessibility label, by the way, is what gets read by VoiceOver. So back to that, like map pin, map pin, map pin. That means our accessibility label on that map pin is, the string map pin. That's why it's reading that. So when you want to change what is read out by VoiceOver, you change the accessibility label. We're going to come back to that, but while I had it up on the screen, I felt I should let you know. So we want to do accessibility hidden, right? So obviously this is the bool, true. That means this will not be an accessibility element, and it won't be part of our list of accessibility elements that gets read out as we're swiping through all the elements. So that is one way to hide an element. Now, this is a general use case. Image actually has something built in. So I'm just going to comment this out just so you still have that in your code so you see that. But what we can do is go into logo view, jump to definition. Here, image, right? You heard it read out DDG map logo, right? It reads out the name of the image. Well, if we did want it to read out the image, we would have to add an accessibility label so it read out a more human readable thing. But we want to actually initialize our image a completely different way. So we'll do image, and then you see we get a decorative initializer. So you see it creates an unlabeled decorative image. So this basically hides an image, DDG-map-logo. So when you initialize it with decorative, that means it's not going to read out the label. It's going to be hidden. So next time we test our VoiceOver, we're going to be swiping through the elements. It's just going to completely skip over the DDG map logo. So again, the rule here is if you have an image that you don't want VoiceOver to read, initialize it with decorative when you can. You'll see in future screens when we're initializing using a UI image, we can't do that, so we got to do it a different way. But that is a built-in way for a typical image. Or again, back to our location map view, if you want to just hide any accessibility element that's not an image, because again, that decorative initializer is image specific. You just want to hide some random thing, accessibility hidden, true. Okay, let's comment that out. And now let's talk about this map pin thing that is a bug. So let me tell you how this would actually work. So on our DDG annotation, right, above our tap gesture, for the annotation, we can do accessibility. And again, I don't want this one. This is the one that's deprecated. I want the longer one. So accessibility label with a text, and I pass in the text. For the simple example, I could just say Chipotle, but this will read out Chipotle for every annotation. So I need to make this more specific, right? I want to do location.name, right? Except I do want this to say map pin. So map pin. And when you're giving your accessibility label, you got to tell it everything to say. So I want to say map pin, Chipotle. And then we need a little bit of code here for the users checked in. So we'll do another string interpolation. And it's this right here. This is a number. Remember, we're returning the int. So the default is 0. So it's either going to give me the number of people checked in or 0. And then, I'm going to run out of room here, but we'll say people checked in. So this doesn't work. And I believe it's a bug. Let me go to Twitter here to show you what I did, because I was racking my brain about this, right? So I put out this tweet. Any SwiftUI accessibility pros know how to give map annotations an accessibility label. VoiceOver reads map pin with the code below, and I can't attach an accessibility modifier to the actual map annotation. I want to give the location context to VoiceOver, saying map pin isn't helpful. That's all the stuff we just talked about. And I kind of posted my little code snippet. I simplified it so it wasn't a bunch of gibberish, but essentially I showed that I was putting the accessibility label on my annotation with just to say out the location name. But you'll see when we test this, it still just reads out map pin, which isn't helpful. So what I want to point out here is that, I got some replies. Majid, who is very well versed in SwiftUI, maybe you follow him. He says, sounds like a bug. And then Nathan Tanner, who is accessibility software engineer at Apple, working on SwiftUI, straight from the source, says, thanks for bringing this to our attention. If you got a feedback number, would you share it? I said, I haven't created one. He says, no worries. It'll let you track it when it gets fixed. So this sounds like it is a bug. So I'm assuming this code should work. But if you're watching this way in the future, maybe the bug is fixed. Maybe I'll be updating this bug in the iOS 15 update section that's coming in a couple months. Who knows? But this code should work. However, it is a bug. So our VoiceOver is just going to read map pin. And this is a good opportunity to talk about what it's like developing with SwiftUI, because SwiftUI is still very, very new. So running into these sort of things is inevitable. Now let's talk about the alternatives. So the alternative would be, okay, this bug is here. I don't know when this is going to get fixed. So the other alternative would be to rewrite your whole map in MapKit annotations in UIKit using a UI view representable, and then doing the accessibility the old UIKit way. It's basically like ripping apart this whole screen and redoing it. Or you can live with it until the bug gets fixed. That is a decision you have to make on your customer base. Now, the one thing I would say is that it doesn't make our app unusable for VoiceOver users, because if you think about it, our map view here and then our list view here are essentially the same thing. They're just different visual representations of it, right? One's on a map, one's in a list. So they could still go to the list screen and use our app perfectly fine. Is that annoying? Yes. Is that great UX? No. But again, we're dealing with a bug in Swift UI. This is what you're going to deal with when you're on the cutting edge, working with the latest and greatest. Again, the alternative is to completely rip apart the screen, rebuild it in UIKit, and then who knows, maybe the bug gets fixed in 2 months and then you got to rebuild it again. So again, these are the kind of decisions you have to make when you're running a product and running an app. Okay, with that said, I'm going to run this on my device and then I'll pop the AirPods back in and we'll test this on VoiceOver. And again, our thing should say map pin, map pin, map pin. That should still be the same because that's the bug I talked about. But as I'm swiping through the elements, we should skip over the DDG logo and remove that mild annoyance. Okay, here we are on my phone. Turn on VoiceOver. Okay.
Dub Grub. Map. No features visible. Use the rotor to access points of interest.
All right, got it. All right, so now I'm going to swipe through. Again, we should be hearing the map pins. That's the bug. But I should skip right over the logo. Let's try it. Swipe, swipe, swipe.
Map pin. Map pin. Map pin. Map pin. Map pin. Map pin. Legal. Link. Tab bar. Locate. Profile.
Yep,
locate. Select legal. Map.
Yep, we didn't go to the image. So again, we skipped over quote unquote useless elements to the VoiceOver user. Now you saw me just swiping back and forth. I should say swiping left and swiping right to swipe through the elements. You can also drag your thumb around to get to the elements. However, we're going to do that on another screen. I mean, I'll do it right now, but it's tricky when you're doing it on the map because it's going to pick up all the roads and start reading off all the roads. So like, watch.
Make
a liar out of me. He was doing that before. But yeah, so yeah, I can just do that as well.
Shows more info.
Sounds like a little remix that was going on there. All right, so that is our map screen. We're going to move on to our location list screen next. Got to double tap on it. So in the next video, we'll do a quick run through of it. I'll point out the areas we want to fix, and then we'll fix them just like this. And we'll just keep doing that throughout the screens. But back to this one, hopefully that map pin button gets fixed because I do think that is a huge knock to our VoiceOver user experience. Again, just saying map pin, map pin, map pin, not helpful. I want to say map pin, Chipotle, 6 users checked in. That would be great. Now let's move on to our location list view and our location detail view. So here we go. Turn on VoiceOver.
Dub Grub spots, heading.
All right, so now that's our heading. We'll talk about, you can make things a heading to, again, give more context about the screen. We're going to talk about that on our detail screen, but now that you heard Siri say it. So again, let's start swiping through.
AC Kitchen and Lounge. Nobody's checked in. Button.
Okay, and when it said button at the end, that's the navigation link, so they know they can like go to a detail screen.
Chipotle, +2, button.
Okay, it says Chipotle +2 button. But remember, the +2 doesn't give all the context, because that means there's 6 people checked in, but it just said +2. Okay, so we certainly have to fix that. But while we're on this cell, let's talk about potential paths we can take for our user experience. Do we want them to be able to swipe through every avatar? And like maybe we would play, because they can't see the image, so maybe we would play the first name of each person as they're swiping through. You could say Chipotle, swipe through Sean checked in, Jobs checked in, Dummy checked in, whatever. I don't like that. I feel like, that's just way too many swipes. Again, trying to make the navigation easy and summing up the most useful information to them. So I think this is similar to our map pin, where as we swipe...
AC Kitchen and Lounge. Nobody's checked in.
Okay, that's fine for nobody's checked in. But here we want to say Chipotle, 6 people checked in, right? I think that's the information as they swipe.
Chipotle, +2, button.
See?
Grace Deli and Cafe. Nobody's checked in. Mezcal Restaurant. Nobody's checked in.
Okay, so
Grace Deli and Cafe. Nobody's checked in.
I gotta stop swiping so we're not talking over each other. So I think that's the main fix, is not have it read out the individual button, just have it say Chipotle and give me a summary of how many people are checked in. So let's go back to Chipotle.
Chipotle, +2, button.
Okay, so our list screen should be a relatively simple fix. And again, you can hold your thumb down or whatever finger and drag.
Grace Chipotle, Grace Peggy, Grace Chipotle.
So that's how you
button.
So that's how you could navigate like more quickly rather than like swiping through.
Mescal restaurant. Nobody's checked in. Button.
I accidentally tapped the phone rather than swiping through each one. Okay, so let's go back to Chipotle.
Grace Chipotle. +2. Button.
And then you double tap to go there.
Image. Pots. AC Kitchen and Loo.
Why'd it say AC Kitchen and Lounge?
Grub spots. Back button.
Okay, double tap the back button.
Grub spot. Grub spots. Heading. Chipotle. +2. Button. Image. Chipotle. Plus image.
Okay, I don't know, maybe VoiceOver gets a little confused. But anyway, you see it read the image. So we want to do the same thing. We want to skip this image, right? Even if we had a great description that said, you know...
Gmail. Now. Sean Allen. Julius Dog Jerk Jericher just
bought a
purchased
course.
Dub Grub. Swift UI. MapKit and CloudKit for $69. Julius Dog Jerk Jericher just enrolled in Dub Grub. Swift UI. MapKit and CloudKit $74.69. Dub Grub. Swift UI. Map.
Okay, you can do a 2-finger double tap to get them to stop. But okay, somebody just bought a course and I laughed because Siri reading out that long name was kind of funny. So, hey, Julius, thank you for purchasing the course. I should probably turn notifications off while recording my phone. But hey, let's move on and hope it doesn't happen again. Or, I mean, somebody can keep buying courses. I'm not mad about that. Anyway, so we want to ignore this image. Even if we gave this image a good description of, you know, food line at Chipotle, people getting served, that still provides no use to the navigation. So, okay, so we want to hide this image.
1S Market Street Suite 40.
The address, that's useful information.
It's Chipotle. Enough said.
That makes me laugh. So yes, we want them to read the description. Okay, now our buttons, the way our buttons read out is it's going to read something along the lines of the SF symbol name, which is weird for some of them. It does it for some of them, but not for all of them. But either way, I'm going to swipe through the buttons and you're going to hear what Siri says, and you're going to see how that is not useful to the VoiceOver user. So what we're going to want to do on our buttons is add our own accessibility label so it says more useful things like get directions to location, call location, visit website, right? Tell it what the button does. So, okay, I'm going to go through the buttons and just let you hear what it says.
Location services. Button.
That's not location services. That's get directions.
Network. Button. Link.
Network, what is that? So you see why you get some stuff for free, but it's not a good experience. You have to put that extra layer of polish to make it a good experience, okay?
Call. Button.
Call button, that's pretty good. We're gonna make that say call location to be like very specific. And then this one.
Person, Phil, Spark, button.
Yeah, person, Phil. Yeah, that's read off the SF symbols. Okay, so now we're going to keep swiping.
Who's here?
Okay, so who's here, that's what we want to label with is heading, right? We want to say who's here, heading. So they have the context of the screen that this is a heading for a section. And then you can also add something called an accessibility hint, which again, we're going to do in code, where you can, give them a hint about like what this section is. So for this hint, I want to let them know that this next section is scrollable if there's a lot of faces. So I will say, bottom section is scrollable or something like that. So our VoiceOver user experience is going to say, who's here? Heading. Bottom section is scrollable. Like that way they know what's going on. Okay, so now let's kind of scroll through the rest.
Image. Grub.
Okay, so that just gave you the image name.
Image. Person.
It's just saying image, right?
Image. Sean.
Okay, now it's
Dummy.
getting to the name.
Mock.
So
Image. Okay,
so let's go back to Sean.
Dummy. Sean.
So let's think about what would be a good user experience here, right? We want to combine the image and the name into one element, right? We don't need those separate. So we want that to be one element, and then we don't want it to read the image name because, again, if they can't see, like that's pointless. So what we're relying on our sighted users to see is like see the profile image and the first name to connect those two to like kind of know who it is. Well, the visually impaired user doesn't have that context of the image. So for this, I'm going to combine these two elements and read out the first and last name. So that would say Sean Allen. Well, we don't have a last name for our dummy data. We could go into CloudKit and fill it in if you wanted to, but it's going to say dummy n/a because that's what we have for our default last name. But you can imagine like it would say Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, or, as it goes through the names. So those are the main things we want to do. Again, I'll run through that real quick again. We want to hide the banner image, not good information. We need to give our buttons more useful names. And then we need to add some context to our who's here, which is going to be a heading. And then we're going to let them know this bottom section is scrollable because there's a special gesture for VoiceOver users to scroll. And then we want to combine our avatar images with the name into one element. So they're just scrolling through each person. And then we're going to call out the person's first and last name as they scroll through. So that is the user behavior we're going for. Let's go to the code, implement it, and then we'll test it. Okay, back in Xcode, let's go to our location list view here. Okay, so here's all of our cells. Now what's going on when it read out the +2, because +2 is a button in our cell. So it's reading out our children. There's something called the accessibility tree to where it does read out like the child stuff. However, we want to take our cell and make it one element and say what we want to say for that element. This is what I'm talking about, like, summarizing all the info into one element, kind of like what we're going to do with our avatars, right? We have the avatar image and then we have the name. We want to combine those. So we'll do something similar there as well. But what you need to do here, so for our location cell, we want to do accessibility element. Let me find, there's a lot of stuff here. Not that, there's accessibility element with children. We'll find it. We'll get there. There it is. Accessibility element with children. So we can do what's called combine. We're just going to combine all the children. Contain is the default, but we can do ignore. So what ignore is essentially saying is, hey, ignore all the accessibility elements of my children. And our location cell has, all our avatar images, the location button, our nobody's here empty state, right? We're saying ignore all that, but when you do that, nothing's going to read out. Well, we want something to read out, but here's where we're going to basically manually say what we want it to say as they're swiping through the cell. And again, the purpose of this is to create one summary element so we can have a smoother navigation, right? Each swipe is a new cell and we're not dealing with all the child views. So that's what that does. And then now we give it our accessibility label. Again, it's the one down here. And then the text we want to give it is, okay, and this is going to be similar to where we're going to combine stuff. And we're actually going to refactor this out in a second because we'll talk about something. I'm getting ahead of myself. I do that a lot. So the text we want it to read, we'll do string interpolation, is, again, location.name, and then space, we want it to read out how many people are checked in. Again, the same behavior as our map pin, which is bugged and doesn't read out, but this one will actually read out. So again, our profiles here, now this is an array of profiles. Back on our map screen, we were getting the int. Remember, we made those two similar network calls separate so we customize them. Well, remember, this one's getting an array, so we're gonna paste that in there. So for our array, we have to do .count to get the number. Now this is and then we'll do, people checked in. Now, this is crazy, right? This is a lot going on in a string. So I'm going to refactor this out to clean up this call site. And what you may not have noticed, and I didn't notice until I did it, right? So it's going to read out, say Chipotle, 6 people checked in. Chipotle, 0 people checked in. Well, what happens when there's 1 person checked in? You notice I just said person, right? It would say Chipotle, 1 people checked in. That's not good. So we're going to write some conditional logic to where if it is 1 person, it will say 1 person checked in, not 1 people checked in. But it will say 6 people checked in, not 6 person checked in, right? So little things like that improve the user experience. So let's go to our location list view model to write that logic real quick. And here below it, I'll move this up here. We're going to write func create voice over summary, and we'll say for and is a location, and that takes in a DDG location, right? Because we got to pass in all the location information, and that's going to return a string, right? Because that's what goes into the text. Okay, so now we need to start basically working on this logic. So the first thing I need is the count. So we'll say let count equals, and is our checked in profiles at the key location.id, if you remember all this, right? And again, we want to give it a default of the empty array, and then .count. Right, basically the same line of code that we've been using here, essentially. Checked in profiles, location ID, well, I guess it would be down here. Default .count. We're basically just refactoring that out back to our view model. So now that we have our count, well, it's just telling us we need to return a string. We'll get there, Xcode. Now that we have our count, we need to handle behavior differently if our count is 1 or any other number, right? Because any other number, 0 people checked in, 99 people checked in, 6 people checked in. Basically, everything but 1 will be people and 1 will be person is what we want to say. So let's do the conditional for that. We'll say let person plurality, how's that for vocabulary, equals, and we'll do a ternary operator here, count equals to 1. So that's saying if count is 1, do something. If it's not, do something else. So what we want to make person plurality is if the count is equal to 1, we want it to be person. If the count is not equal to 1, we want it to be people, right? And we're just going to inject this string accordingly in our return string. So now we want to return our string. We'll do some string interpolation here, right? Because we want it to be location.name. So again, that will say Chipotle. And then the next thing we want it to say is the count. And the next thing we want it to say is person plurality. And then we'll say checked in. do a Command B to make sure I didn't mess anything up. I'm going to walk through this because this is a weird line of code. I get it. So, okay. So we're creating a voiceover summary, basically just to simplify the way our code looks at the call site. So we create our count. This is basically the count of how many people are in our checked in profiles array. Cool. And person plurality, which is my way of saying, hey, is it going to be person or people? And we're determining that based on if the count is 1 or not. Okay. And then we return a string that's going to say our location name, our count, person plurality, and then checked in is 2 words. So again, the example would be Chipotle, 6 people checked in, or Grace's Deli, 1 person checked in, right? So you see how this will change. And when we test it, I will sign into a different location. So I'm the only person there, and we'll walk through it. And you can see how smooth it is as it's going through. It switches between people and person very naturally. So again, little things like this add to the user experience. So let's utilize this code here. So instead of viewModel checked in profiles.count, all this stuff, we want it to be, or actually I need to go all the way back here. Let's just get rid of all this. It's confusing, right? So this string, we don't need it to be in the string here. We say viewModel.create voiceover summary for location and pass that in. So there, that is much neater, much more readable than all that stuff. And we abstracted all that kind of weird logic into our viewModel there. But our call site reads nicely, very easy to see what's going on there. And if you think back to last video, we didn't do it because our code wasn't working because of that bug, but I'll just show it to you real quick. This location map view, right? We could refactor out this messiness too into the view model. So take that on as a challenge if you'd like to do it. It's very similar to what we just did. And you will need to do that people, person, plurality because the same problem applies. But again, it's almost essentially the same code. So back to our location list view. And basically what we did is we summarized our cell into one element by ignoring our children. Never ignore your children. And then accessibility label, basically gave it our own label, and we summarized that with what we just talked about. So that is done. Let's go to our location detail view. Okay, so this screen is a mess. Yeah, we're going to do it anyway. Remember I said we're going to have a dedicated video to refactor this screen? Again, these are some of the problems you deal with in real life. It's like, is this refactor going to come back to bite me if I do all my accessibility stuff first? Hey, I guess we'll find out. So we're going to do our accessibility stuff first and refactor in a future video. So our banner image view, again, we could just do .accessibility.hidden. Well, remember, this is the one that's deprecated. You kind of do accessibility hidden right here, true. And actually, I think this is what we end up having to do. I'm sorry. You could do it here where it's out in the open, or you could abstract it away into our banner image view, which is down here. So if I go to our banner image view, right? So here we're initializing the image with a UI image. And if I do another image initializer here and show you everything we got, there's no way to put decorative on a UI image, right? So that's why I didn't just do decorative. However, what you can do is you can put the accessibility here where it's kind of abstracted away because we basically always want this banner image to be hidden. So accessibility, true. And again, that's personal preference, right? Do you want to put it here, abstracted away where it's hidden? Or do you want to make it super obvious that we've taken care of the accessibility by putting it up on like the main screen? I'm going to choose to abstract it away. I think that makes this main screen neater. And especially, like I said, it's already kind of a mess that we got to refactor. So anything I can do to make this main part neater, I'm going to do. Okay, next up, let's add on our buttons here, right? We can add on our location action button label. We can add our .accessibility label here. And it takes in a text with a string. Now, what was this one? This was get directions, right? Where it just said location services. If you remember, we don't want to say location services. We want to say get directions to location. Now, here's the thing. When things are reading out, that slows the user from navigating, right? If they're swiping, waiting for VoiceOver to say something, if you have this long paragraph that it's going to say, that's annoying to the user too. So I would argue get directions to location might even be too long. Like, is get directions, is that enough? I think that is enough. Even though get directions to location isn't that much more, this little stuff adds up. So for that reason, I'm going to go with just get directions and assume that is, good enough. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my assumption that I'm working on. Now, back to Sean contradicting himself like he does. I just said, I want to hide this accessibility stuff, within the location action button. Well, if we did that, if I go down to the location action button, I would have to pass in something to differentiate my different buttons, right? Because I can't have the same string of get directions, for each one. So that's a case where I think it might be cleaner and neater just to have these accessibility labels out here in the open. Again, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that, or if there's a better way you think to refactor it. Okay, in our link, we're not going to say get directions. We're going to say go to website. Again, short and concise, let them know what's going on. Here in our call button, I'm going to say call location. Remember, the default behavior right now, it just says call. That might be good enough, but I could see some ambiguity. Like, who am I calling? I think call location is clearer, and it's not that much longer. So again, just talking through my reasoning on why I'm deciding to do this stuff, and maybe the pros and cons and the trade-offs of it. Okay, so the last one on this location action button, which is our check-in. Now we want to do this conditionally because we don't want to always say check-in because they could already be checked in, right? Like all these conditionals we have here. So we want to do the same thing essentially, except I'm going to copy this string because we are putting strings in there, right, for the image name. So we want to do view model is checked in, except here we want it to say, so if we're already checked in, we want it to say check out of location. That might be a little too long, but I think just check in and check out might be a little too vague. I think check into location, check out of location is more descriptive. So as you can see, the constant battle, check into location. So the constant battle is brevity versus clarity, right? How short can I make it while also being not confusing? So that's the constant struggle with what to say for voiceover. Okay, so let's review that real quick. So if we are checked in, if that equals true, our voiceover, when they get to the button, will say check out of location. Yep. And then when we're not checked in, it will say check into location because that's what we want. Okay, cool. So our buttons are good. Let's go down to this who's here text, which again, we're going to refactor. So like I said, the first thing we want to do is make this a header, add the trait of a header to, again, give context on the structure of the screen. So to let them know there's like a new section. So we'll do accessibility, and this is an add traits. So we're adding an accessibility trait here. Again, as you see, there's a lot of accessibility stuff. There we go. Add traits. And the trait we want to add is, you can see there's is button, is image, is key, right? You can let people know exactly what they're doing, but we want to let them know that this is a header. And then for the label though, I don't want it to read just who's here. I want that to give more context. Even though they might have gotten that information when they first came to this location, as they're scrolling through, I kind of want them to be able to visualize that below this is like a scrollable view of a bunch of people checked in. So to do that, we're going to make our accessibility label. Yeah, I hope they get rid of the deprecated ones soon because it's a lot to scroll through. Accessibility label to say, and we're going to kind of add some logic here. We want it to say who's here, question mark, and then we'll say string interpolation, view. I'm basically want to say 8 people checked in, 6 people checked in. That's what I want to say. So view model checked in profiles. I'm not getting my autocomplete. Am I messing something up? Dot count. Nope. Just Xcode being Xcode. Checked in. I'm not going to say 8 people checked in, 8 persons checked in. I guess you could have, now that I'm thinking about this, I guess you could have just said 8 checked in, 1 checked in, 0 checked in for our map pin and our list, rather than saying like 8 people checked in and then doing that logic for 1 person checked in. We already did it. We'll leave it there, but we're not going to do it here. We're going to keep it simple. But in a real product, if you're like really being a stickler, really being a polish, you should be consistent, and it should say the same thing in both areas. Okay, I covered my ass on that one. And so accessibility hint. This is a hint where, so the hint is, oh my God, let me find it before I start talking. Okay, the hint is kind of like another accessibility label. After it reads the first accessibility label, there'll be a slight pause, and you'll see it when we test it, and then it will read out the hint. So this is a case where it is a long thing, and maybe most users will just swipe through before they read the hint, but I like having this hint there in case they need it, right? Because they may scroll through and get confused and maybe scroll back to the header, because again, the header is like the, separates the section, and look for a hint. At least that's my thought process anyway. So the hint we want to say is bottom section is scrollable, right? So they know that they can scroll this bottom section. Okay, so and the reason I'm like not testing this as we go is it's such a pain to like turn on VoiceOver, go through it, come back, do all my recording. So that's why I'm saving all the testing for the end. But I recommend as you're doing it, and this is what I did when I was building it originally, every little thing I did, I went, turn on VoiceOver, tested it, make sure it was what I wanted. But we're doing all the testing at the end for logistical reasons. So let's go down to our scroll view here with our lazy grid of our first name avatar view. So I'm going to do the same thing we did in our location cell where we ignore the children. So again, ignoring the children makes this all one element, essentially. Like in my brain, the way I remember it is I look at it as like a summary of all the children. Even though I type out that I'm ignoring my children, I think I'm summing up my children and speaking for them. That's kind of the way I think about it. So dot accessibility element, children, dot ignore. And then now when you ignore it, it's not going to say anything. So you got to be sure you tell it what to say. So accessibility down here to label. And then what we want it to say is a text with a string. We want it to say, we'll do some string interpolation. We want profile.firstname space, another string interpolation, profile.lastname. So instead of reading out image, Sean, it'll just say Sean Allen, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak. That's who I chill with. Anyway. So that is how we are ignoring that. And that is all the main elements. So you see, yes, I explained it. It took us, 20 minutes in this video. But this is the big picture of what I'm talking about is once you kind of know what you're doing, it may take you just a couple hours to make, unless you have a ridiculously huge app. If you have a relatively small app like Dub Grub is, it may only take you a couple hours an afternoon to take care of a lot of this low-hanging stuff that can greatly improve your voiceover UX. Again, I just want to make sure I talk about the differences, right? Making your app 1000% accessible and accessibility perfect, that's a huge step and a lot. But I think you can do a lot for your voiceover users by just taking an afternoon, doing this kind of stuff that we're doing. I think that really goes a long way. So that is what I recommend doing before you launch, not trying to get perfect accessibility before you launch. Okay, so now I'm going to run this on my device to test it. Sean's iPhone 12 Pro. Run it, we'll turn on voiceover, and then we'll walk through it. And it should be a much better user experience for the voiceover people. Okay, here we are. Turn on voiceover.
Dub Grub, map. No features visible. Use the rotor to access points of interest.
Okay, I had to wait for them to finish. So now we want to go to our locations, right?
Tab bar, locations,
double tap.
tab.
Okay, so before we get to our location detail view, we should be able to...
Heading.
Sorry, we should be able to, I just apologize to Siri for talking over them. We should be able to just swipe through and then again get the summary of our cells, right? So let's try this.
AC Kitchen and Lounge 0 people checked in. Chipotle 6 people checked in. Button. Grace Deli and Cafe 0 people checked in. Button. Chipotle 6 people checked in. Button.
Right, that's the exact behavior we were going for. So now I will double tap on Chipotle.
Chipotle. Grub spots. Back button.
Okay, so I'm going to swipe through all the elements and we can see that we're going to skip the image and then our buttons are going to be better named and then our avatars will read off the first and last name, except warning, it's going to say dummy n/a because again, we don't have a last name for our dummy user and our default last name is n/a. But if you had real users, it would read it out. And you'll see that when I get to mine, it'll say Sean Allen. Okay, so let's go through this.
Chipotle. Heading. 1S Market Street Suite 40.
See, we skipped over the image. That's what we want.
It's Chipotle. Enough said.
I agree. Okay, here's our buttons. Listen to what they say.
Get directions. Button. Go to website. Button. Link. Call location. Button. Check out of location. Button. Who's here? 6 checked in. Heading. Bottom section is scrollable.
All right, did you see that? I mean, that was a long one. I get it, and I know most people may skip it, but if they do listen to it, they'll get a lot of information. I'm going to let that play again.
Check out of location. Who's here? 6 checked in. Heading. Bottom section is scrollable.
See, we give a lot of information there. Okay, now let's go to our section.
Sean Allen. Dummy n/a. Mock n/a. Jobs n/a. User n/a. Was n/a.
Okay, but you see we combined it and it would read out their first and last name. Let me go back to me.
User n/jobs n mock n dummy n/Sean Allen.
Okay, so that's now they can see that is checked in. Now I'm going to check out and go to a
Gmail. Now, Sean Allen.
Keep selling courses.
iOS Dev Launchpad for $39. Dave McCull.
I mean, again, I'm not mad about it, but honestly, I didn't sell any in between my two recordings of my phone, but
Gmail. Now, Sean Allen. Dave
Not
McCullough
mad.
just purchased Swift UI Fundamentals for $69. Cap S.
Okay. All right. Okay. I guess as soon as I start recording on my phone, I get these alerts. Anyway, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, I wanted to check out. So let me go to the checkout button.
Who's here? Check out of location. Button.
Double tap.
Check out of location.
I felt the haptic.
Check into location.
I'm checked out,
button.
and now it told me to check into location. So now let's go back to the list screen here.
Grub spots. Back button.
Double tap it.
Grub spot. Grub
I'm
spots.
going to go
Heading.
check in somewhere else here. Let's go to check into Grace's Deli.
Grace Deli and Cafe 0 people checked in. Button. Grace Deli. Grubs. Check into location. Button. Check into location. Check out of location. Button.
Okay, so now I'm checked in, and we can see it's going to read the description
The
here.
menu is inspired by fresh ingredients, and each sandwich is tastefully handcrafted upon order. Warm homemade soups and organic salads.
Cool. Okay, now let's go back.
Grub spots. Back button. Grub spot.
Now,
Grub spots. Heading.
it's so weird hearing like voices. Anyway, now let me scroll through and you're going to hear the difference between persons and people. So when I swipe over Chipotle, it'll say 5 people checked in. And then when I swipe to Grace Deli, it'll say 1 person checked in. All right, listen, it sounds so smooth. I like it.
AC Kitchen and Lounge 0 people checked in. But Chipotle 5 people checked in. But Grace Deli and Cafe 1 person checked in. Button.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so our location list screen and location detail screen are almost done. Let me go to the location detail screen to show you what we're missing here.
Grub spots. Back button.
So it's not obvious.
Go to call. Check who's here.
So
1 checked
watch
in.
when I go to my
Heading.
profile.
Bottom section is scrollable.
When I go to my profile, it doesn't let me know that I can tap it. Watch.
Sean Allen.
It doesn't give any indication that it is tappable, that I can pull up the thing, right? If I double tap the screen, I see
Sean
the
Allen.
modal. Now, if I'm navigating around,
Profile. Select map. Sean Allen. This is my who's here. Best check out call test. Go to get to.
It's a weird navigation because
ingredients and each sandwich is tastefully handcrafted upon order. Close button.
because the way we set up our UI, like it's putting this element like in the middle. So we're gonna have to group this element differently to handle this. But this video is already getting so long. We're going to handle that in the next video. In this video, we're going to focus on the voiceover of our modal view that you see here. Now, remember at the end of last video, I showed you as we're swiping through voiceover, it doesn't lay out correctly, right? It kind of mixes the 2 views. So we're going to handle that. And then we got to adjust our modal view as well. But first, I realized we haven't even done the code yet to show the proper stuff in the modal view, right? Okay, like back into Xcode, right? I have it pulled up. If I click on Sean, we still get like all the test user stuff. Okay, so let's stop this. First things first, let's get that showing real data, and then we'll shift to the voiceover stuff to get that modal taken care of. Okay, so stop this. Here we are in the location detail view. I'm gonna scroll down here. I think I went past it here, right? Yes, so the on tap gesture of our first name avatar view, we're doing view model.isShowingProfile equals true. Well, just like we did the selected location back on our map screen, we need to track the selected profile. So in our location detail view model, we're going to create a variable. I'm going to put it under this location here, var selected profile, and that is of type DDG profile, and that is an optional. However, we are going to have a did set on here. And when we set this, and I'll explain this once we get it, I'm just typing this because we're here. So when this gets set with a value, we want to do is showing profile modal equals true. So if I go back to my location detail, I no longer have to set is showing profile modal true here. When they tap it, I just want to set the selected profile, right? So when they tap it, I will do view model.selected profile equals profile. And again, this is the profile we get in the for each as we're going through our grid. So whatever one I tap, I'm setting the selected profile equal to that profile. And then in our view model, right? So that means this did set fires off. So when this value gets set, it's showing profile modal equals true, and it will show our profile. Now we have to show our profile modal with the proper information. So back to the location detail view. That is down here in our sheet. Or I'm sorry, not the sheet. We're doing this logic here, if is showing profile modal. So here's where we're creating our profile modal view. You see it takes in a view model and a profile. However, the profile we're passing in is our mock data one that we've been creating. So here we want to do view model dot selected profile, but that is an optional. You'll see Xcode's going to say, hey, this is an optional. I'm going to force unwrap it. And again, I'll give you my usual spiel. The reason I'm force unwrapping it and I'm fine with this little bit of unsafety is because, again, the only time this gets set to true is in the did set, right? So it's like, as of right now, there's no way it cannot have a value when this fires off. Now, of course, the usual caveats apply, right? If you're working on a large team, some other developer could write some other code that messes this all up. Or another argument is that Sean 6 months from now, right? Future Sean is kind of like a new developer coming into the code base. I might not remember this, so I may mess it up. I understand that. But again, back to my philosophy, I am fine with these situations, this little bit of unsafety where it's highly, highly unlikely it'll break. Unlikely is not impossible, by the way, I realize that. But again, the trade-off is unwrapping all these highly unlikely cases really clutters up the code and makes things more convoluted. So my calculated trade-off is I'll take a little bit of unsafety for a cleaner, more easy to read code base. That's the calculated risk I am taking. If you are not fine with that calculated risk, that is fine. That is subjective. Unwrap the optional. Okay, so let's run this and we should see the proper information in our modal view now. Okay, so I'm gonna click on Grace's Cafe and Deli, click on Sean. There we go. I see the proper information. Sean Allen, my company. I hope this works. That is my little placeholder bio. So we'll close this, stop running it. That is good to go. Some quick things before we switch over to the voiceover mode and fixing that. So as I've been playing with voiceover more and more, I've discovered some things that I messed up in the previous video. I find a lot during my edits, right? I'll edit the video and I'm like, I wish I wrote it this way, or I wish I wrote it that way, but it's such a small fix. I'm not going to go back and record an hour-long video just to do that little fix. But anyway, so I'll fix it here. So if I go to my location detail view, as we scroll up here, so one of them is the who's here header. I use the old accessibility add traits. Remember, these accessibility and then parentheses, these are all deprecated, right? These longer ones that say accessibility label, accessibility hint, those are the new ones. Again, SwiftUI sees a lot of small syntax changes. So I'm going to do .accessibility and I'm going to look for add traits. You'll see it here. There we go. Add traits, and then it is .is header. So again, small syntax change, but again, that other one is going to be deprecated, so your code will break in a few more system updates. But this is the new one. This will keep you good to go. And then looking back, I decided to put these accessibility labels on our buttons instead of on like the view that we had here. I'm going to put them on the actual button here. And this, the main reason I did this was for this link one. So you may have heard on your own testing, like when we are swiping through our buttons and we get to this one, it says go to website, button, link. It says button and link. Well, that is because it has the trait of a button. We can actually remove that trait if we do .accessibility, remove traits. Just like we can add traits, we can remove traits. So I don't want this to say button, link. So I'm going to remove the is button trait. So now it's going to have the is link trait because this is a link type. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure why it says button, right? Because our location action button, like, yeah, button is in the title. Maybe it's pulling from there. Again, I'm not sure the underworkings of SwiftUI, but if I go into our location action button, it's just a circle, image, Z stack, like nothing in here is a button, but it keeps saying button. And again, I think maybe that's because it's in the name. That's the only thing I can think of. But anyway, to make it not say that, remove the is button trait, and now it will just say link, right? Not button, then link. So again, some small fixes I found during the edit, just some polish. Okay, so now let's run through the modal stuff so I can point out all the errors and point out what we're going to fix. All right, be right back. I got to get my AirPods and hook up the phone and all that. All right, got the AirPods, got my phone, good to go. Let's run it here on Sean's iPhone 12 Pro. Oh, I'm running it somewhere, I guess. Stop now, run it. Okay, here we are on the map. Of course, first things first, turn on voiceover. All right, going to locations. Okay, so now I'm going to point out the buttons here, right? So I'm going to swipe through.
Sean Allen.
I'm sorry if I'm talking over Siri. I'm not used to it. So I'm going to swipe through the buttons, and you're going to hear our link or the go to website is just going to say link.
Who's here? Check out of location. Button.
Button.
Call location. Button.
Button.
Go to website. Link. Get directions. Button.
Okay, so we did fix that little is button thing. Again, small thing there. Now, I'm going to go down to my avatar.
Go to call, check, who's Sean Allen.
See, it just says Sean Allen. They don't know that it's tappable. Okay, so we can add that is button trait to it. So it will say Sean Allen, button. But even that might not be enough. Like, because what happens when I tap the Sean Allen button, they may not know. So we're going to add a hint that says something along the lines of, show Sean's pop-up profile. I don't know. We'll figure out the exact wording, but let them know what's going to happen when they type that button. Double tap.
Sean Allen.
Okay, so this is my avatar view. Now, like I showed in the last video, it's like mixed in with all my other elements, and it's unnavigable, right? If you couldn't see the screen, you're going to see how it would just be like unusable. So watch, I'm going to swipe through.
Tab bar. Sean Allen. I hope this works. Who's here? What? My company. Sean Allen. Check out of location. Call locate. Go to web. Get direct. Close. The menu is image. Grub.
Right. So you see how that is all mixed up. So we need to differentiate our modal somehow. We're going to handle that in the code. There's an interesting discussion around that because there might be another bug. I'm not sure. We'll talk about it though. But then we can also improve our modal stuff, right? Because I'm on my image, right?
303S image.
You see it says image. I want to just skip the image, right? Again, for a non-sighted user, it's kind of irrelevant. So now let's go through some of our information.
The menu is close. Get directions. Go to call. Check Sean Allen.
See how I had to get there? Okay, so my name, that's fine. Now,
my company.
My company. Now, you never know what the company name might be, so it may not be clear what it is. So I think we're going to add a label that says like works at my company, works at Apple, right? I think we'll add that to the label. And then same thing with the bio.
Who's here? I hope this works.
Right, because the bio could be nonsensical. Who knows what someone's going to put in their bio? So I think I want to say before like bio and then have them say whatever the bio is. So just, more user-friendly, add some clarity to it. So those are the three main things we're going to fix, right? We're going to make our avatar say button and let them know what happens when they double tap our avatar. We're going to fix our, this modal getting all mixed in with our other stuff. And then we're going to clear up our modal a little bit. So, okay, let's go back to Xcode and handle that. Okay, so back in Xcode, and again, another reminder is we're going to refactor this whole screen. It's getting pretty messy, just a reminder. I have to say that because looking at it, I'm just like, ugh, we'll get there. Okay, so our avatar here, our first name avatar view, we want to give the trait is button. Okay, so dot accessibility hint, there we go. And that'll be no, not hint, I'm sorry. Accessibility add traits. There we go. Just like we removed traits from our link, now we want to add traits to this one. Dot is button. And again, adding traits makes VoiceOver treat this like it's a button, which it is. So now we want to add an accessibility hint. And the text there is, we'll say shows, and we'll do profile.firstname. Add a little personality to it, right? Show Sean's profile, we'll say pop up, right? Because I want to be as descriptive as possible, because calling something a modal, everyday users might not know what a modal is. But if you say pop-up, everyday users are going to know what that is. Okay, so again, we added is button and added our little hint to our avatar, so that handles that. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is handling how our modal is all mixed in with our other stuff, because that is a common occurrence, right? Like showing a modal on a screen, super common. It happens all the time. So should be a built-in easy way to do this. And there is. However, I couldn't get it to work. So let's talk about that, and then I'll talk through my solution, because having the built-in way not work, usually when you have to do the solution, it's like a super hacky workaround. Well, the solution I came up with is literally one line of code, and it's pretty straightforward and makes sense. So it's not like a super hack, but it doesn't feel like the built-in way. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about that. So the built-in way, if I go to the view model is showing profile modal, well, first of all, I always want to hide this from accessibility, right? This is our black background, which again, we'll refactor out to say like black background or whatever. Or I guess it's not a black background, it's just system background. But what I want to do here is I want to accessibility hidden, right? I want to hide this. True, because like I never want to have that black transparent background show up. So that's always it. So that's not part of our solution. That's always going to happen. Okay, so the solution that is the built-in way that I thought was going to be a quick one line cool is to add a trait to our modal view called is modal, just like we did is button. And we'll dig into this here, right? So I'm going to do accessibility add traits, right? Dot is. You see, by the way, let's do a quick review here. These are all the traits you can add, right? Is button, is modal, is selected, is link, is image, is modal. And let's read this real quick. Siblings of this accessibility element will be ignored by accessibility. And siblings is the key word there, because that depends on your view hierarchy. So only other views on the same level of your view hierarchy will be ignored, right? Because that'll put the modal on top, and that way you can't swipe to something like under the modal. And then there's others, right? Is static, is search field, is keyboard key, right? There's a whole bunch of them. But this is how you can basically let VoiceOver know how to treat something. So I want this to be treated like a modal. Now back to that sibling view, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, and I'm happy to have this discussion in the comments, but so is modal, cool, so that means all my siblings. Well, siblings, and I'm not sure if the Z stack matters, but I'm actually gonna make my code smaller for a second, and hopefully I remember to make it bigger, just to show you this. Okay, so I'm gonna use some code folding here, right? So everything is in this like root Z stack, right? So I'm gonna code fold the V stack here, and then, okay, so now we just have our Z stack consists of our V stack, and then, if this is true, our background color and our profile modal view. So within our Z stack, which is our root view, and again, this is maybe where I'm confused, but I tried it both ways and it didn't work, right? The siblings within the Z stack are the overall V stack, which has all our other stuff in it, our background transparency, and our profile modal, right? So those are the three elements in our Z stack. So I'm taking that to be those are the siblings. And again, if I'm misunderstanding this, and siblings are on the same like level, right? Because Z stack, right, is vertical in the hierarchy, right? So like the bottom of the Z stack is the V stack, the middle layer vertically would be the black background, and then the top layer would be the profile modal view. So maybe siblings means everything that's on this top layer will be ignored. That could be a possibility, but if you think about it, when you're showing a modal, isn't everything always underneath it? So making is modal ignore siblings will kind of defeat the purpose if everything is always going to be underneath the modal in the, Z stack of the view hierarchy. So that doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, is modal doesn't work. I'm not going to run through and test it and show you that because again, it's such a hassle to hook up the phone, line up those recordings. But go ahead and test it, or you can just take my word for it. Trust me, it doesn't work. I tried a bunch of stuff. I even tried thinking, hey, maybe it has to do with our animations. I tried getting rid of the animations and then still doing it. Didn't work. Tried a bunch of stuff, banged my head up against the wall, and then, finally, you just got to move on at some point. And then, like I said, when my solution was one very straightforward line of code, I was like, that's fine. Let's move on. Because again, I'm not sure if this is a Swift UI bug because Swift is so new, or if this is something I'm messing up. Again, maybe I'm misunderstanding that siblings. I did a ton of research on this, by the way, a lot of Googling. Couldn't figure it out. So if you do have the answer, you do figure it out, or maybe I just missed something, let me know in the comments. But I'll show you my solution. Again, it's one line of code, super straightforward, so I am fine with it. But let me uncode fold that VStack, the VStack that holds everything. Keep that in mind. Well, first I want to get rid of this isModal property on our modal view just because that is not working, so I don't want to have it in there. So our overall Z stack, right, that has all of our stuff in it. This is the ending curly brace. I'm sorry, it's up here. This is the ending curly brace for that Z stack. In fact, I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna go up and code fold just to make it super clear, right? So our ending curly brace on the Z stack, I can do dot accessibility hidden, and then based on is showing profile modal or not will be true or false. So it will be view model dot is showing profile modal. So if is showing profile modal is true, I want accessibility hidden on this whole Z stack to be true, right? So that'll make everything under it hidden from accessibility. And then if view model is showing profile modal is false, that means everything is showing in that Z stack, and this works. So like I said, it's one line of code, pretty straightforward, right? It makes sense. You're hiding this from accessibility when our modal is showing, and then you're unhiding it when our modal is not showing. Makes sense. So that's the solution I went with. Even though it feels like that is modal is the proper way, I would love for that to have worked. Couldn't get it working. And again, maybe one of you out there has the answer and we'll update it in the optimization section. But I Googled my ass off, banged my head against it. I couldn't figure it out. And this was a fine solution in my opinion. Okay, so let's unfold the Z stack here. Get all our junk back out there. Now, the last bit we want to do is to tweak our profile modal view specifically to make it more user-friendly, right? I said, worked at company, bio, this. So let's go add those labels in our profile modal view here. Okay, so we'll go top to bottom. First name, last name, that's fine. We don't want to do anything there. Company name, okay, here we want to add our accessibility label. Accessibility. This is the reason why I always scroll down, because I always mistype accessibility and it's just faster to find them like this, at least for me. So text, I want this to say works at, and then I will say profile.company name, right? Just again, a little bit of extra there, and I'm gonna copy and paste this so I don't have to type that out again. Okay, same thing with our bio. We're gonna do bio, comma. And when you add a comma in here, it adds like a natural pause. This way it wouldn't say bio, blah, 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 like right away. It'll say bio, natural pause, and then read it. So that's what a comma will do here in your accessibility labels. And then finally, I just want to hide the image, right? Except just like before, when we're initializing with the UI image, we don't have a decorative initializer. So we'll just do the old-fashioned way, right? Dot accessibility hidden, true. Okay, so quick review, location detail, what we did here on our avatar, right? We added a is button trait, so it knows, hey, it's a button. We added a little hint saying this will show Sean's pop-up profile, cool. And then we did that is modal issue here on our profile modal view where the is modal didn't work. That feels like the built-in way. And then we just ended up on our Z stack here. Can't find it. It's too big of a Z stack. That's why we need to refactor. Where is it? Okay, yeah. Wait, did I put it on the wrong thing? How did it get down here? I thought I did the code folding. Okay, I got to check this because this looks like it's on our overall Z stack. I thought I did the code folding and put it on the V stack here. Did I mess that up? Okay, I'm not crazy, right? I could have sworn I put that right there. Let's do that. Okay, I can't wait to edit this video to go back and see what happened there. How did that happen? Okay, now we'll uncode fold it. Maybe it happened in the uncode folding when something weird happened. Okay, there it is. I'll put it right here. Okay. Can't wait to see that in the edit. Did I mess that up? Anyway, so yes, so we're hiding our overall Z stack. If our modal is showing, cool, it's hidden. If it's not showing, it's not hidden, we can navigate. That'll fix it. And then we went to our profile modal view. and just updated our labels to make it read better and be more understanding to the voiceover user. Okay, so let's run this on the phone and test it. All right, here we are. First things first, turn on voiceover. Thank you. Okay,
Dub
let's
Grub.
go to
Map. No features visible. Used tab bar. Locations.
went to our
tab.
locations,
2 of
double
3.
tap the locations. Shut up, Siri. Go to Grace's Deli.
Grace Deli and Cafe. Grace Deli. Grub spots.
Cool.
Back button.
Go to my avatar, and then once I tap it, I'm going to let it play.
Sean Allen. Button. Shows Sean profile pop-up.
Okay, see Sean Allen button. It paused for the hint. Shows my pop-up. Cool, that's what we want. Double tap to show the pop-up.
Sean Allen. Works at
Now-
my company.
Now when we swipe through this, we should be just stuck within our modal. Well, not completely stuck, right? We'll still be able to get to the nav bar, like the back button in our header, and we'll still be able to get to the tab bar because those are navigable even to sighted users, right? So we're not completely stuck in our modal, but we're not going to do all the stuff that's under our modal. So let me swipe
Sean
through
Allen.
and show you.
Close. Button. Grace Deli and Cafe. Grub spots. Back
Okay,
button.
so this is the very beginning of the screen. We got our back
Grace
button,
Deli and Cafe.
nav
Heading.
bar. Now we go to our modal.
Close. Button.
We skipped over our image.
Sean Allen. Works at my company. Bio. My company. Works at my bio. My company.
Copy paste there.
Works at my bio. My company.
Because when I copy and pasted this, I just left it. I didn't do profile bio. So we'll fix that. I won't rerun the phone, but that'll be a quick fix. But you can see we are not navigating to the stuff underneath it.
Tab bar.
Right, we
Nav.
go right to the tab bar from
1
there.
of 3. Bio. Works at Sean. Close. Grace Deli and Cafe. Close. Sean. Works at bio. Works at Sean Allen. Close. Button.
Right. Okay, so we close this
Close.
and we're good to go.
Sean. Tab bar. Sean. Who's check. Call.
And now-
Go to website. Link.
Okay, cool. So our detail screen with our modal is working, minus the bio thing. We'll fix that. But you see how we went from a completely like unnavigable mess to something that's usable. And it may not be perfect, but it's usable in a huge leap from where we started. And that's the whole point. And I know I've reiterated this a bunch, but I really want to like drill it into your heads, is that that low-hanging fruit of going from completely unusable to something that's usable is what you should do before you launch. However, getting 100% accessibility, making it perfect, that is stuff that you can improve on over time, right? Before you launch, get the voiceover behavior good, and then after you launch over time, focus on making it great. So that's the main point I want to drive home. Again, because I think people might be confused. They think they have to launch with perfect accessibility, all that stuff I showed. It's just not the case. Again, make it usable, then improve it. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is stop running this before I forget. Back in Xcode, minimize that, is our location, the modal view here, right? Here's our copy paste error. Just make that bio. I want to do that before I ended the video because I'll forget. Okay, so modal view is good to go. The last part of voiceover is our profile screen. So let's move on to that and finish up this section. Let's knock out the voiceover on our profile screen that you see here, and then that'll wrap up this section. So here I am. I already got the app running on the phone. Let's scroll through it and test it and see how bad the damage is.
Hi,
Okay, so
keyboard
we're on our
button.
keyboard button. Let's swipe back.
Profile. Heading.
Okay, that's what
Image.
it says.
Hub.
Okay, so it just says image. However, we want to let them know that this is a button, right? Because when you tap this, this pulls up the default photo picker. Luckily, we don't have to do anything with the photo picker because once we're in that photo picker, that's like Apple's code, so they handle the accessibility for us. But just letting them know that this is a profile photo and they can tap on it to edit, like we need to pass that information on. So we'll probably have it is button trait and maybe a combination of a label and a hint. Okay, so next.
Double tap to edit. Swipe up or down to select a custom action. Then double tap to activate.
Okay, see that had a long hint. We didn't do that. That's the default text field hint. But you said it said Sean, text field, double tap to edit. And then it gave a bunch of other stuff. But that lets the user know, hey, they can double tap to edit this. And I won't go through the hassle, but I did test this without having a user. And it will say, first name, text field, double tap to edit. And the first name is a different voice. So I think that's what they do for placeholders to let the user know it's a placeholder. But yeah, it was, as I navigated when there was no profile, it worked fine to let them know that, hey, they could edit these. But our labels and hints that we're going to add will also address that situation as well. Okay, so I'll swipe to the next one.
Alan, text field.
Okay,
Double tap
Alan,
to
text
edit.
field.
Swipe up or down to select a custom action.
Okay, my company is going to be the same thing.
Compose.
Oh,
Image.
we're not on my company. We went to that little edit button. So again, we're going to have to do that ignore children because we just want to, that little edit button that I'm on right now is just pure decoration, right? So us letting them know that this is a button that will let them upload a photo serves the purpose of that edit button. So we'll have to make sure we handle that. But now I should go to my company.
My company. Text field.
Yep.
Double tap to edit. Swipe up or down to select a custom action. Then double tap to activate.
Okay, and again, it'll read out our placeholder. So hopefully our placeholder is good enough to let them know what to enter here.
Bio. 82 characters remain.
Okay, so bio 82 characters remain. I think I want to make that a header. So it gives a little context that we're kind of on a new section right now. And when it goes to the text view, they will get it.
Checkout button.
Okay, this just says checkout button. I think I want to change this to checkout of location. And I guess if you were like really going the extra mile, we don't have this capability in our app, but you could say checkout of Chipotle, checkout of AC's Kitchen and Lounge or whatever. But we're not like storing where we're checked in anywhere. So unless you want to make another network call right here to get it, which you probably don't, you would store that name somewhere that you could get access to it. That way you could say checkout of Chipotle, checkout of whatever to be more. But checkout of location is what we're living with for right now. Again, back to what you can do to make it usable and then what you can do to make it great, right? There's a whole nother level of things you can do, but it requires more work. Again, I feel like I beat that dead horse. Okay, next element.
I hope this works. Text field. Double tap to edit. Swipe up or down to select a custom action. Then double tap to activate. Use the rotor to access misspelled words.
It's a long hint. Okay, so it just says, I hope this works. I think I want to put that bio in front of it again. Again, just for clarity to let them know this is the bio. Because I don't think we have a placeholder here. I'll have to check the code. I don't remember. We'll check that when we go there. So when this is empty, either we make the placeholder, let them know what it is, or we add a hint to give them more context, or we say bio. We'll have to figure out how to handle that. But we want to let them know that this is the bio, and we should let them know that, hey, this is a 100-character limit, even though, we do have it right above there. Again, just to reinforce that to avoid confusion. Because from my reading, again, I'm not a pro voiceover user, maybe some of you are, but from my reading, what I've heard the hints are for is, if they're navigating quickly and they don't quite get something, that's when they'll go back and pause for a hint. They may not wait for a hint every single time, but if they don't get it, they'll go back and pause for a hint. So even if your hints are long, I think it's fine to add them because the user will keep navigating away. It's not like they're stuck listening to some big long sentence. Like you heard the hint for the text field, right? I'll play it again.
Checkout. I hope this works. Text field.
Here's the hint.
Double tap to edit. Swipe up or down to select a custom action. Then double tap to activate. Use the rotor to access misspelled words.
Right, see how long that hint was, but they don't always have to hear it. Okay, so that's what I think we'll do there. And then update profile.
Update profile button.
That's fine. Maybe we can add a hint there that says this will update your, that's probably redundant, right? The button says update profile, or it will say create profile button. So I think that's fine. Okay, so those are the fixes we're going to do. Let's go to Xcode and start implementing them. Okay, so here in our profile view, let's just go top to bottom, right? Here's our image, and you're gonna see how we definitely need to refactor this here in a second. So the first thing we wanna do in the image is ignore the children, right? Because here's our edit image little thing. We wanna group these all together, so we will ignore children. So that is .accessibility element children.ignore. And then we also wanna give it a trait of a button, right? So we wanna let them know this is a button. So .accessibility add traits .is button. Now we got to give it a label because again, if you just hit ignore, it's not going to say anything. So .accessibility label. I should have just typed an L, one more letter, and it would have got me there. So the accessibility label is, we'll say profile photo, and then the hint is where we'll let them know what it'll do. So .accessibility. See, this is why I always just tab down. Accessibility label. For some reason, that word gives me, actually it's hint, gives me trouble, especially when there's a microphone in my face and I got to type around the boom arm. Not great. So accessibility hint here is text. And then that text will say, opens the iPhone's photo picker. And I wanted to be specific about it's the iPhone's photo picker, not some custom photo picker we did. It's the iPhone's, I should even say, maybe default photo picker is too much. I think saying the opens the iPhone's photo picker is fine. Okay, so that's our image. Again, our text fields were fine, and because we're not doing anything crazy weird with the text field, so the default behavior is good to go there. Now our button, our checkout button, which we may want to refactor it later. We want to add the accessibility label. I'm just going to go down. It's faster for me. Is text. Maybe I should just practice typing accessibility 1,000 times. Is text of, we'll say check out of current location. Check out of current location. And again, if you wanted to go the extra mile, check out of Chipotle, check out of wherever they're at, but you'd have to do a lot more code to track that. Okay, so that is our checkout button. Now, the next thing we wanted to do for our, actually, no, we skipped over something. I forgot about the characters remain view, right? The 82 characters. I wanted to let them know that this is a header. This is like a new section. This is your bio section. I'm trying to give as much context as I can here. So that's why I want to do accessibility And you really see me struggle with this. Add traits.is header. Okay, then now down on our text editor, which is our bio, the hint I want to give is about the maximum. Accessibility hint, it's right there, is a text. And here I want to say this text field has a 100 character maximum. And then the label, again, I want to do that bio, comma, and then read the bio rather than just reading the existing bio here. So accessibility label is a text. And then this will say bio, comma, then string interpolation. We'll do view model dot bio. So whatever bio we have there, it will read out when they're there. So say bio, I hope this works, which is what my bio is. And then it will also give the hint. This text field has a maximum or 100 character maximum to let them know. Okay, let's run this on the phone, run through it and check it. Okay, here we are. Turn on voiceover. Thank you.
10. Dub
Okay,
Grub.
we're going to
Tab
go to
bar.
our profile.
Dub Grub. Hide keyboard button.
Okay, I tapped on the keyboard button to get us to the start. Okay, so I'm going to start swiping through and see how it reads.
Profile heading.
That's fine.
Profile photo button. Opens the iPhone's photo picker.
Right? Profile photo button opens the iPhone's photo picker. I think that's good.
Sean, text field.
We didn't do anything with the
Double tap to edit.
We didn't do anything with the text fields. Now, remember when I did this before, it went to the edit button on my photo after my last name. So it should go first name, last name, my company, and skip over that because we ignored the children. So let's try that.
Alan, text field. My company, text field. Bio, 82 characters remain. Heading.
Okay, it's a heading.
Check out of current location button.
Check out of current location button. Cool. Okay, let's test our bio.
Bio, I hope this works. I hope this works. Text field. This text field has a 100 character maximum. Double tap to edit. Use the rotor to access misspelled words.
Okay, it read I hope this works twice. Not sure why it did that. Let's try that again.
Check out of current location button. Bio, I hope this works. I hope this works. Text field. This text field has a 100 character maximum. Double tap to edit. Use the rotor to access misspelled words.
Okay, so we'll go back and get rid of our accessibility label because apparently that was repeating it. Thought I tested that and it worked fine. But what we'll do here for our accessibility hint is we'll say this text field is for your bio and has 100 character maximum, right? So I'm gonna let this play again and let you hear that and imagine it says this text field is for your bio and has a 100 character maximum for the hint.
Check out of current location button. Bio, I hope this works. I hope this works. Text field. This text field has a 100 character maximum.
Yeah.
Double tap to edit. Use the rotor to access misspelled words.
I think that's the fix we'll do. And I won't test it afterwards because, again, it's a pain. But we'll do that slight tweak to that for this. But that wraps up our profile view and, in turn, wraps up our whole app for the initial pass of the voiceover. And again, yeah, we did a bunch of videos. I was explaining everything. But once you know what you're doing, you can see it's not going to take that much time to get this base level of usability for voiceover for your screens. And I say this is the initial pass. Again, before you launch, I've said this a bunch. However, the next step after this initial pass, in my opinion, or at least what I would do, is I would try to track down a voiceover user, right? You gave it your initial pass, what you thought would make it most usable. That's the good, right? Now, find a voiceover user somehow, some way. Maybe you have one in your family, friends, extended network. Maybe try on Twitter, see if someone downloads your beta. Have them run through it, and then they will give you their feedback. Because, these pro voiceover users, they're like a wizard with their phone. It's amazing watching them navigate. And they will for sure tell you what they expect and how to improve it. So that is how you go from making the good user experience that you ship with to improving it over time to make it that great experience that you're going to strive for. That is probably going to require the input from an actual, pro voiceover user. And that being said, if any of you taking this course are a avid voiceover user and you see ways we can improve this, leave a comment. I would love to see that. And I'll probably update that in the optimization section. Of course, depending on what the feedback is, but if there's enough there and it's good stuff, yeah, absolutely. I'll add another video where we take this to the next level. Okay, so that wraps up the voiceover for the whole app. Again, just the baseline first iteration of it. Now let's move on to dynamic type. Over the next couple videos, we're going to be working with dynamic type and adapting one of our screens to work with it. Now, what is dynamic type, just in case you've never heard of it? Well, dynamic type is a system setting that a user can choose to make their font larger, maybe they have trouble seeing, or they can make it smaller. For example, I use a smaller font by default. Let me show you how to turn that on, and then I'll show you some examples of apps, utilizing dynamic type and some apps that aren't, and then I'll give you some stats on why you should support it. Okay, let me show you how to turn it on. So here I am, got my phone up. You can do this on the simulator. We're going to do that a lot, but I want to show it to you on the phone so you can see some real apps in action. So on your phone, go to display and brightness, all the way down to the bottom, text size down here. You see, okay, apps that support dynamic type will adjust your preferred reading size below. And you can see I have the second to smallest because I like a lot of information density on my screen. It's personal preference. But look at the screen when you go all the way up to the big size. And you see down in the lower left there, larger sizes are available in accessibility settings. We're going to go to that because we're going to handle that in our app because that is the very, very large text setting. Now that I have my settings to the largest size, let's go to the Instagram app. Sneak peek, we're going to go to Chipotle as well. So you can see I'm at the Porsche homepage. Now you can see, look at this super large text as compared to how it normally is as you scroll up. Now the images are the same. Let's go take a look at one of their latest pictures, the latest GT3 Touring Edition in all black. Nice, nice. But you see the texts are larger. Their icons aren't bigger. It's really just the text. And again, that's dynamic type. So you can see that is a system-wide setting that all apps that support it will show up. Now, let's go to Chipotle. Chipotle does not support dynamic type. And you'll notice this, like it's not actually that common for third-party apps to fully support dynamic type. Obviously, Instagram is one of the biggest apps in the world. Of course they do, but Chipotle, they don't. Like if we go to their menu, you see nothing changes on font size, even though I'm at the largest settings. I also don't think this Chipotle app is a native app. I'm like 99.9% sure it's not native. But anyway, you can see major companies' apps and huge apps that get used by millions of people. Not all of them support dynamic type. So let's talk about, should you support dynamic type in your app? So here's a snippet from a great article on the PSPDF Kit blog. They talked about dynamic type a couple years ago. So this is like old 2018 data, but I highly doubt things have changed that much. But as you can see, the various text sizes, right? Large is the default, right? So 72.78% don't change it, right? They keep the default. That means 27% of people do change it. And that's actually a lot. And you also notice it's kind of split almost evenly between people that make it larger and then people that make it smaller. Like I said, I myself make it smaller, but plenty of people make it larger. So then the question is 27% of your users enough to support dynamic type? I would argue yes, but again, the same caveat applies as voiceover. Do the most impactful stuff first and then slowly improve your dynamic type over time on some of the stuff that may not be as important. Again, the message here is don't think that you have to wait to ship until you have all this 100%. Again, make your app as usable as possible. Take care of those severely wounded soldiers, like that analogy I used, and then ship. I know I've said that 1,000 times, but as you can tell, I think it's very important. So anyway, 27% of the people are using some form of dynamic type, so you probably want to support it. Now, the tough part isn't supporting dynamic type in the code. In fact, especially in SwiftUI, you get it relatively for free. Like we've been doing it all throughout. Like anytime we use a font that is font.caption, font.title, font.body, which all of our texts are .body by default, the only places we aren't supporting dynamic type are the places where we specifically hard-coded our font size. And I mentioned that when we did it, that, hey, we're not going to support dynamic type here. So anyway, in the code, supporting dynamic type is as easy as, font.title, font.caption. And here's a screenshot from the human interface guidelines, which of course I will link to with some other resources as well. But you can see that here's the large title, title 1, title 2. You can see all the types and you can see their sizes. Again, we're in large, normal default, but up at the top, you can see you can switch between extra large, small, extra small, and see those font sizes. And then like we talked about earlier, there's these large accessibility type sizes, which go even further. So as you can see, a large title in the super large accessibility is 60 points. And maybe as you're starting to see, all the difficulty in supporting dynamic type is in adapting your UI to support the very, very large text, because your whole UI has to change. An example of this is this tweet from John Fox, iOS engineer at Netflix, who just did their details page in dynamic type fully. And you can see all these images, like how drastically different the UI is to support the very large text. So that's where all the work comes in, is looking at UI, thinking about it, and thinking, okay, how can I adjust this to handle dynamic type at the very large settings? And there's a couple different techniques we'll go over that you can do that. Another thing I want to point out, again, just to reemphasize what I've been talking about how you don't have to have this all perfect before you ship. Look at the date of this tweet. May 19th, 2021. This is Netflix. And this is not me bashing Netflix. Don't get this twisted. But my point is, how long has Netflix been around? How long has Netflix been a juggernaut and have tons of resources, and they're just now getting to dynamic type on their details screen? Again, I'm not bashing Netflix at all. The point remains, You don't have to have this completely perfect before you ship your MVP, your 1.0. Again, that's the major point. Are you sick of me saying that yet? So that's your introduction to dynamic type. And the whole point of this section over the next couple of videos is to give you an example of how we will adapt a screen to support dynamic type. So you know what it is, you know what to look out for, and you know what to expect when it comes to your apps. Now that you've been introduced to dynamic type and you know what it is, let's start working on one of our screens to adapt it to support dynamic type. Now, we are only going to do one of our screens for the sake of time, because this is very time consuming, and to be honest with you, this course is getting quite long. It's got already 70 videos, might even end up being 80 videos. And I like my courses to be as digestible as possible. Like, nobody likes to take a marathon course that never ends, right? I like to be able to have you complete it, feel good about yourself, and be excited to move on to whatever you do next. So anyway, that's why we're only doing one screen. But even this one screen is going to be like 3 videos. So hopefully you understand why we're not doing the entire app, but you can take it on as a challenge, right? I'm going to show you how to do probably our most tricky screen, right? Our location detail screen. And then you can take the learnings from there, challenge yourself to adapt the other 2 or 3 screens for dynamic type. Now, this first video is essentially going to be setting up our previews. We're going to have multiple previews for multiple different dynamic type sizes. And really, we're going to assess the damage and start thinking about how we're going to fix that damage. Okay, so let's work on getting our preview set up. As you can see, I have it here. We're using our mock data of Sean's Bar and Grill. I want to replace this with actual Chipotle, because when we run the preview, like I'll run it, nothing's going to happen. Nobody's here because this is a fake one. But when we put Chipotle's real information in there, we'll get like our checked in users and everything. And that's what I want to test. So the first thing is setting up our mock data. So if you go to our model, mock data, and in the description below the video, I have a code snippet for you to just copy and paste to save some time. So I will do the same, and I'm going to put it under the location. See, we just have one called Chipotle. I'll walk through it real quick because there's only one minor difference. I'm initializing a CK record a little bit differently. Before, we're just passing in the record type. Well, it does have an initializer where you can pass in the record ID, which takes in a record name. And I went up to our database, got the record ID for Chipotle, and plugged it in there. That way, it's the same record we have up on our iCloud. The other thing I did was, remember our description for Chipotle was just, it's Chipotle, enough said. It's kind of funny, but it doesn't really test the limits of our dynamic type. So I went back and added a longer description for Chipotle, basically to max out that 3-line description that we designed for. If you remember all the way back when we were like creating our data, I said I made the descriptions for our locations intentionally small enough to fit on 3 lines in normal circumstances. Of course, this is not going to fit on 3 lines with super large text, but these are the lengths of the descriptions we have. So I've already done this, but go ahead and copy this description and then go to your iCloud. And here in your Dub Grub database, right? I already have I queried for my locations. I guess I got ahead of myself here, right? You go to your records, just in case you forgot, public database, DDG location, query records, scroll down, find Chipotle. Here's the Chipotle record, and then update the description. I guess I passed it right here. Instead of it's Chipotle, enough said, update that with the one from the dummy data that I have in there. Again, this is just to test the limits of our descriptions. And then while we're here, if you do have a user that doesn't have a max description, so again, go to DDG profiles to query. You should see just your, all your dummy people too. And if you do want to go the extra mile and give your dummy users like actual data, go for it. I'm just going to change mine. So I'm going to click on my profile here, Sean, and you see I've already done this again. Update your bio. Well, maybe not even do it here, actually do it in the app, because remember the app will enforce that 100-character limit. Essentially, I created a bio that maxed out that 100-character limit, because you're going to see, we're going to test this pop-up modal that you see here. You're going to want to test it with the maximum, right? You're not going to want to test it with a 2-word bio. So anyway, I just went in and updated my bio so it was maxed out at 100 characters, again, to test the extremes of that. Okay, so that is it for iCloud. Okay, we've added our dummy data. There you go. You should have that. Go back to location detail view, the preview load. Okay, so down in our preview, all the way to, we have to refactor this screen. You'll see that's coming in a future video. But now in our preview, instead of mockdata.location, we'll do mockdata.chipotle and then hit try again. It should take a second to actually give us Chipotle stuff. There we go, finally. It took me a couple tries on the preview. I had to build the project with Command B. Again, previews, I have a love-hate relationship, but there we go. We got our Chipotle, and like I said, this is the normal text. Look at our description. It's basically maxed out our 3 lines that we originally designed for. And then if I run our preview, you're gonna see it's gonna make the network call and get our actual checked-in users, and I'm gonna click on Sean, and now I have a bio Actually, while we're here doing this, I realized I always want this to be a black background. We did system background, so it will be white in light mode. I just don't like the way that looks. As you can tell, I almost never test in light mode. I'm always in dark mode. So we're going to change that real quick to black. But the point is, you can see my bio is pushing the 100 character limit because again, that's what we want to test. We don't want to test a 2-word bio. So, okay, we'll close that. We'll stop running that. And let's change this real quick. So if I go to this color background here, we have system background. That's real simple. Just say .black and that's good to go. Okay, so now let's start creating additional previews. So down to our previews, it's right here. So you see we have location, and I'm gonna actually, we're not gonna be writing a lot of code, so I'm gonna minimize this so I can get that down to one line. It just looks nicer, especially when we have multiples. So to get multiple previews, right, I have my navigation view, location detail view. Well, I'm gonna create 3 more, because I want 4 total. I'll tell you why after I create them. So I'm gonna copy, paste, paste, paste. That's my 4 previews, and you can see on the preview canvas, I have 4 vertical previews that we can scroll around. And again, the idea here is we're going to set each different preview with different dynamic type settings so we can see them all at once. Just makes things nice and easy to navigate. Okay, so why I picked 4 was because on this first one, we're going to do the smallest, extra small. On the second one, we'll keep it normal just so we have that. On the third one, I'm going to do extra large, but not the accessibility extra large, just like the standard extra large. I know that's confusing. By the end of this video, you'll understand that. And then the last one is for the accessibility super large. I guess if you wanted to be insanely thorough, you could create, maybe there's 10 previews for literally each step on the dynamic type sizing to like really be thorough. But I felt like these kind of checkpoints within the list of sizes I felt was good, right? We have the largest, the smallest, and then one that's kind of in the middle, and then our normal one. So that's why I went with that. Okay, so now let's talk about actually making these show the dynamic type size. So this icon right here lets you adapt your preview to various things. Now I can change the device, as you see here, all the different devices. Now we're not gonna go this far, but I wanna talk about this to illustrate how deep this second 90% can really go. Think about this. All these different device sizes, you would have to make sure all the different dynamic types looks great on all the different devices and adapt your UI accordingly. Yeah, that's a lot of work. It can be a lot, depending on your layout, of course. If you have a super simple, basic layout, it might not be that much work. But if it's complex, that's gonna be a lot of work. Of course, we're not gonna do that. I just wanted to point that out to you to, again, this second 90% like really adds up. So we're going to keep our device the same. We're only going to do this for the iPhone 12 Pro. Again, if you support landscape, we're not supporting landscape, but if you were, you'd have to adjust your layout for that for every single dynamic type size. By the way, I'm highly against supporting landscape unless it's absolutely necessary. I just forgot to uncheck those boxes in our project. Dub Grub will not support landscape. I'll talk about that in an optimization video and go on my rant there. Color scheme, again, light and dark mode, we're gonna keep it light. Okay, dynamic type, here's where we are. So I want to do extra small for this one, but you can see all the options. Extra small, small, medium. Again, large is the default. Extra large is the most you can go for the standard dynamic type. However, if you flip that accessibility option, you can go even, super large. But anyway, this one's gonna be extra small. And you'll see it'll update the preview. It made it smaller. Now, most likely when you make things smaller, you're probably not going to have to change anything the vast majority of the time. Of course, I'm sure there's certain scenarios with the UI where when you make it smaller, maybe you want to adjust things to not make it look weird. I'm sure that case pops up, but the vast majority of the time, the extra small stuff, your UI is probably going to be fine. And as you can see on our UI here, yes, it did shrink the description. And I can scroll down here. Look, that's what it looks like on normal. That's what it looks like on small, right? Normal, right? Food goes all the way to the end right here. On small, food gets pushed in there. So again, nothing crazy changes, so we're not going to make any changes on the extra small size, but I did want to point that out and show you that you should look at that because again, there are certain cases where you probably would want to change stuff, not in our case. This is our normal one, which is kind of our reference. Down here, we want to change this to extra large in the standard. So dynamic type, extra large, not accessibility, not yet. Do that, close that out. Okay, so now you can see the text got a little bigger and it's starting to truncate. So we're gonna have to adjust the size of our description text field. If you remember, we hard-coded that, right? So we have a fix for that. This is gonna be a relatively simple fix on this large one. What else should we do? Let's actually run it because we wanna see the faces down here. And I'll run it on the smaller one too. So you see our names, right? Sean, Dummy, Mock, Waz, User. That did get bigger, but I still think that looks fine. I don't think we need to adjust anything. I think we'll be good. Yes, super long first names will truncate, but the way our UI is, I don't think there's a way to not truncate a super long name and keep large text. We are going to adjust our grid for the super large stuff. I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I will show you how to do that in case you disagree with me thinking this is fine and you want to maybe make it a 2 width column or even a single width column. Spoiler alert, that's what we're going to do for the large one. And also I want to point out, well, let me make this large one dark mode just to fully illustrate it. I got to stop running it. Weird thing, anytime you stop running it, it goes up to the top of your list. So that can be confusing. Trust me, I've tried to update this thinking this was the large one we just did, but it went up to the top of the list and now I'm back on small, so minor annoyance. But anyway, so let's make our large one. We'll go dark mode, right? Okay, now the reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you what's happening in our code over here. So look at our previews in our code. Look, our first one, we got environment size category dot extra small. This is our normal one. We didn't do anything. My point is, you're doing stuff on the canvas and it's putting the code in for you, right? So if you did want to just do it in code, that's how you would do it. And by the way, remember this environment size category. We're going to be accessing this when we actually adapt our UI. So keep that in mind, but that's how you do it in code. We're going to keep doing it on the preview because it's pretty simple. I like the point and click stuff for that. Okay, so now's where things are going to get fun, right? So this is our super, super large one. Well, we haven't done it yet. Let's do that. So let's make this dynamic type. Accessibility, extra, 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 extra large. And the reason I went all the way to the end is because if we adapt our UI to work with extra, extra, extra large, it's going to work with the smaller ones, right? So let's do that. Let's see here. Oh boy. This is where the fun begins. So you see we have a lot of work. Let me actually run it. So we can see the faces. Okay, look at the faces, the scroll. It's brutal. You see 4 words of our description, right? So we're going to want to make our description box very, very big. Basically, this whole thing is going to have to go into a scroll view, right? So you can scroll down the whole thing. And that's pretty much always going to happen when you support this, the largest accessibility size, if you have any text, because you're going to see like you can only fit a couple words on a line. So putting the view in a scroll view for this size is pretty common. We'll talk about how we're going to handle that. The tricky thing though with this view, and this is kind of unique to our app, I mean, it's not that uncommon of a scenario, but it's not super common because we have a scroll view here. So when we put the whole screen in a scroll view, we're going to have a vertical scroll view in a vertical scroll view. So we're going to have to talk about how we want to handle that. That's going to give us trouble. But you can see we have a ton of work. And now I forgot to test this on the other ones, but let's click on Sean. Oh boy. Oh man, that's got a lot of work to do there. Obviously, we got to change the size of the modal overall, which we hard coded, right? And for this text size, we'll probably need to make it damn near full screen to cover all this stuff. And then we probably want to put first name and last name on their own separate lines rather than having them together because Sean Allen is a pretty short name, right? Most names are longer than that, and that's already almost filling up the entire screen. So as you can see, we got a lot of work to do for this extra, extra, extra large accessibility size. And again, that's common, right? So I'm going to stop this. This is pretty much how it typically goes. Again, it's super UI dependent, but supporting extra small, probably not any work. And if there is, minimal. Again, that depends on your UI. Obviously, normal is normal. Large, you can see just slightly different that we got to change here with our description. And actually, oh yeah, let's test the modal on large. Forgot to do that. Click on Sean. So again, not terrible, but we do want to adjust the sizing of our modal size to handle our character limits. Again, this is the extra, extra large and standard. So again, back to my point was the standard dynamic types maybe won't have that drastic of work to support. It's when you get into the accessibility dynamic types, like down here, again, that's where the work begins. Now, my hope for this section and you getting experience with dynamic type is that you now have this in your head when you see a design from a designer or you're designing something yourself. Now don't get me wrong. By no means am I saying you should design for this extra, extra large accessibility dynamic type. I'm not saying that at all. But it's hard to give a concrete example in this, but you can imagine a design where you would really back yourself into a corner if you decided to support the extra, extra large dynamic type because your design is like very complex and it just makes it really hard to support. So I guess my point is a lot of this stuff can be handled or prevented, I guess is the better word, at the design phase. If you have experience with dynamic type, you know that the headaches and the hassle you're going to have to deal with, again, you can bring this stuff up to the designer or yourself if you're designing it to make your life a lot easier. And there are a lot of methods that you can do. One very common one is things that are in an H stack that go horizontally across the screen. Well, now you convert that to a V stack for large dynamic types, so now it's vertically stacked. And Tim Rosner, formerly of Twitch, now recently just got a job at Apple. He announced that on Twitter, so congrats, Tim. He put out a great blog post back when he was at Twitch about how he adapted a screen for Twitch to dynamic type that I will link to as well. That has some great insights. So again, my hope from this section is for you to get experience in adapting UIs to dynamic type, so hopefully it can make your life easier on your future projects. All right, let's start fixing this stuff. Well, first things first, let's get rid of some clutter here. I don't need the extra small preview, right? Because we decided we're not going to do anything there. So let's get rid of that. I also don't need the normal preview because we built on that, right? We know that's good. What I do want to keep here is the large and the extra large. And I guess it's nice that I can differentiate the two with light mode and dark mode. So that helps, a little bonus there. Okay, so let's just kind of go top to bottom on the large, right? Our address is fine. Our description though needs to be, we need to let that expand, right? Because we're truncating here. So remember we hard-coded that back in the day. Feels like forever ago, right? So let's scroll down to our location description view. So this frame height of 70, I want to get rid of. So let's get rid of that. And then so what does that do here? Okay, doesn't really change much, but let's get rid of line limit 3 because we do want this to be able to expand on lines, right, as it gets bigger. Okay, there we go, right? Our description expanded, and that's a little preview of what we're going to want to do for the super, super large one. But for the large, that works as well. Now let's run it to see what it looks like when we get our faces. Okay, cool. That looks fine. Yeah, I mean, our scroll view at the bottom is getting a little small, but I mean, it's enough to show 2 rows. I think that's fine, again, for this super large size. So I think that's good. However, we hard-coded that for a reason. So I want to test this. Let's stop running the preview. Now, I want to test this back on our simulator just because this is our normal one. Because I remember, I believe when we showed our faces, it squished the text field to be just one line and truncated it. I remember that's why I think we hard-coded it. It was kind of like a little UI bug. So let's test this and see if we're still seeing that now that we removed our hard-coded height. Okay, here we are. Let's go to Chipotle. Okay, nope, that worked. Scrolling around, we're good. Let's test it when we go from here. I can't remember what happened, why it shrunk to one line. Who knows? Maybe somebody in the comments will remember. I can't replicate it. However, this did go to 4 lines, which not the end of the world. I think that's fine. We wanted to keep it to 3 lines before when we were hard coding it. Adding that extra line there, remember this is the normal font size, I think is fine. But again, remember, we're in complete control of our data. If we wanted to tweak Chipotle's description up in our iCloud, maybe get rid of classically cooked or something like that. That way it was 3 lines. We're in complete control of that. Feel free to do that if you like. But I'm going to let it go to 4 lines, so that's okay. Okay, so I don't know why that's so big. But anyway, removing the hard-coded frame allowed this to expand vertically. Now let's check our... okay, so yes, it is not expanding too much. So I knew we had to add this extra line here. So it works on our large, but our extra, extra large, it's still truncating at 2 lines. We want this to go all the way, right? We want to be able to read the entire description. And we know we're going to have to throw this into a scroll view later. So on our description view, we want to do .fixed size, horizontal and vertical. And as you can see, that messed everything up. So we want horizontal to be false and vertical to be true. So let's click into this and see what's going on here. Okay, open in developer documentation. Okay, fixes this view at its ideal size and specified dimensions. I don't know what that means. Okay, parameters, horizontal, vertical, those make sense. Okay, discussion, here you go. So I like the visual example. So if you did fixed size, horizontal, true, you see it will extend as much as it needs, right? A single line of text too long to fit the box, but if you fix the horizontal to true, it's going to go outside the view. That's why our view looked all messed up before. So back to our code, horizontal is false. That means I want to contain within the view, which we do. We don't want it to spread too far horizontally. That's what we saw, right? If I'm going to change this back to true, that means all of my elements are stretching as far as they need to. The phone can't contain them, essentially is what it's saying. We don't want that, right? So we want that to be false. However, we do want it to stretch vertically as true. Okay, let me refresh my preview and make sure it's working. Oh, I deleted a comma there. So our preview refreshes, great. Now, yes, it is expanding vertically as much as it needs to. However, it is not expanding horizontally, which is what we want. Now, as you can see, I need a scroll view, right? The screen doesn't move. I can't do anything. We just see this. So like I said, this is going to be very, very common in this case of the super extra large type that you're going to have to put something in a scroll view. So we're going to do that here in a bit, but let's check our normal here. Okay, or not normal. This is our large. That looks good. Let's run it to see if our faces down below are still looking good. Okay. Now this does get into the different phone sizes. Again, I'm not going to go down this path. It's very tedious, very time consuming, but you can see like, yeah, our faces are fine, meaning they have enough vertical room for 2 rows on our iPhone 12 Pro. What about the iPhone 8? What about the iPhone SE? Are we going to have to make adjustments on those screen sizes for large accessibility type, right? Again, you can see how tedious and time consuming this gets. We're not going to go down that path, but I want to let you know that stuff does exist. So we're fine here on the iPhone 12 Pro. Let's talk about that scroll view. So you may think if we scroll up here, right? Okay, we got to put this whole thing in a scroll view. Great, let's just go look at our messy screen, by the way. It's a good example though. Okay, you can just add a scroll view up here on the Z stack. Well, that adds an extra layer of nesting. Not to mention we kind of want to do this conditionally because you'll see when we test this, having the scroll view within a scroll view, again, our unique situation for our screen, gives us some complications. So I only want to throw this in a scroll view for certain accessibility sizes. And again, that's where this comes in. If I scroll back down to our previews, this environment size category. So essentially what we can do, and I am getting a little ahead of myself, but we'll come back and explain this in further detail. But big picture, what we can do is we can reach into the environment and grab whatever size category our phone is, and we can do stuff conditionally on that. In this example here, right, we're going to do something slightly different, but I could say if size category is accessibility extra, extra large, then put this in a scroll view, or then do something with my UI, right? You can conditionally do stuff based on the size category. So big picture, that's the kind of stuff we're gonna do, but let's go back to this scroll view and how I don't wanna just add another nested thing here. So I wanna give a quick shout out to Majid here, right? Again, great SwiftUI resource. Give him a follow if you don't already do it. His blog's awesome for SwiftUI, but he has a nice extension that helps out with this specific case. And it's a pretty basic extension. It's nothing crazy, but again, wanted to give him a shout out for pointing me in the right direction on handling this reusability of the scroll view stuff. So go to our utilities extension. The extension is going to be on the UI view. We'll put it under play haptic. I don't know. I like my dismiss keyboard to be the last one. Just me, weird. But we'll say func embed in scroll view. And that is going to return some view. And we want to do geometry reader, which is geo in. Geo is just short for geometry. I'm going to spell it out. I usually just go with geo, but for the sake of education, I'll say geometry for that. And then we do scroll view. I'll explain this here in a second. And then we'll do frame with a min height and a max height. See, normally we've done this width and height. Well, there's another initializer on frame where you can set like min height, max height, ideal height. So we're going to get rid of a lot of this stuff. I shouldn't have hit return. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do a Command Z. You could go through and delete what you don't need. I'm actually just going to type it out. This is me going against my rule of always accepting the autocomplete, but sometimes it's worth it. I'm sorry, this is min height, not width. We're doing min height and max height, just so you know. Min height, comma, max height. There it is. Okay, so min height is going to be geometry.size.height, and that's essentially saying, so geometry reader reads the size of the screen. So min height. Maybe you should do the autocomplete and not type it yourself. Anyway, min height is going to be the minimum height of our scroll view, which for us, we want to be the size of the screen, right? We don't want a smaller scroll view than that. That's fine. Max height, however, is dot infinity because it's a scroll view. Like the height can go, a very long way. So that is what this does. And we're going to call this whenever we initialize our location detail view. And that will embed that in the geometry reader, which in turn has a scroll view, which in turn has frame, which you don't see the self dot just to avoid confusion because you don't have to type self dot. But what self means is, whatever view we call this function on. In our case, we're going to call it on our location detail view. So that's what self is here. I'm going to keep self in there just to maybe avoid confusion, but if you don't like it, you can just have frame because self is understood, but we'll add self in there. So that's what it's doing. It's basically whatever view I call this on, it's embedding it in the scroll view, which is exactly what the function name says. So let me show you how this is basically used. When we're actually going to use it, we got to do a little extra work, but baby steps here. So back to location detail view, on our preview down here, I always get lost in my preview. Again, I can't wait to refactor this screen. The screen drives me nuts. Okay, so let's resume our preview so we can see it. Okay, so we don't want to do this on just normal extra, extra large. We're going to do this on our one that's extra, extra, extra large accessibility, this one down here. So here's where I'm initializing the location detail view. So again, I can do .embed in scroll view. That's the function we just wrote. Let the preview update. Try again. Try again. Come on, preview. Okay, let me do a command B. Sometimes when you get that try again, failed to build, do a command B and then hit try again, and it should work. Again, love-hate relationship with these previews. Okay, here you go. Now we have the whole thing in a scroll view, and now it gives us the well, I gotta run it. I can't just scroll the preview. Once we run it, it gives us the behavior we want. Now you'll notice though, again, this is the issue it gave us in our unique situation where we have a scroll view within a scroll view. And it's different when you have like a vertical scroll view that has a bunch of horizontal scroll views. That's different because the swipe, direction is different. However, having a vertical scroll view within a vertical scroll view is tricky. So you see, I'm not getting the scroll view behavior on our faces down here, the avatar. But that is fine. We're going to live with that behavior for this extra, extra large type. But this is why we can't just completely embed our location detail view in a scroll view. So now I'm going to copy this and I'll show you. We're going to run it in our real code, right? Because we just put this on our preview, right? Embed in scroll view doesn't exist in our real code yet. So let's go to our location list view here. In our list of locations, right, we have our cell where our cell is wrapped in a navigation link. And here in that navigation link, we create our location detail view, right? That takes in a view model. Well, here I can do .embed in scroll view. So this is what you might think you can do because this will throw it into a scroll view every single time, no matter what our accessibility is, right? We didn't differentiate, hey, only do this on extra large, but I want to show you the behavior we get. So I'm going to run this, and remember our simulator is still in normal. So let's go to our location list view, Chipotle. Okay, this is what we just updated, this navigation link. Now this is going to embed Chipotle in a scroll view. Hey, looks fine. But now look at the behavior we get when we scroll. Oh, it's scrolling up the whole screen. And now when I go to my faces, I can't scroll. I scroll up the whole screen. Not the end of the world, right? It's still a usable experience. But remember, the experience we wanted was to keep this top half of the screen stationary and only scroll the faces. So again, this is just unique to our situation where we have a scroll view and a scroll view. So what we want to do, big picture, I'm going to make this smaller, is only do this embed in scroll view for certain accessibility sizes. Now, as you can imagine, let me get rid of this preview since we're not using it to clear this up a little bit. As you can imagine, trying to do that size category logic in our navigation link initializer, like we're going to have some crazy ternary operator in there that's insanely long, that's convoluted. So we want to abstract that logic out to our view model. So we can just say like view model, create location detail view. We'll name it better, but right, we would just want to have one thing and the logic will be abstracted into our view model. So we want to have a function there on the view model. So let's open up the location list view model. We'll do this at the bottom here. So I'll scroll up as high as I can so my face isn't in the way. So we'll say func create location detail view. We'll say for, and this is a location, DDG location. And then now we want to do in size category. And this takes in a content. Well, okay, I don't have Swift UI. That is a Swift UI thing. So we'll import Swift UI. Go down here. And again, if you are in Xcode 13, this will offer to import that for you. But I'm in Xcode 12. So content size category. Let's click into this and talk about what this is. Okay, open in developer documentation. Content size category. Okay, it's an enum. And then you can see, here's all the cases, right? And those are all of our accessibility dynamic type sizes. So what I'm going to be able to do here is pass in whatever our size category is. And this is going to return, again, some view. Because I don't know, well, the reason it's some view is because you know what, let me type this out and it'll make more sense. If I try to explain it now, it'll be confusing. When you see all the code, it'll work. So essentially what I want to do here in the logic is if size category that we pass in is greater than or equal to dot, you can see I can pass in my sizes. Now, I want to add the scroll view for accessibility medium. Because remember, extra, extra large. Well, accessibility medium is where you start to get the really large stuff. And for the sake of time, like trust me, I've tested accessibility medium. We do want to put that in the scroll view. And then for all these larger sizes, of course, we've been testing on the extra, extra large, which was very obvious. We want to put it in a scroll view. Accessibility medium isn't like super obvious, but we're being safe here because on accessibility medium, you can feel free to test it yourself. The scroll view at the bottom is like, it can only show like one row of faces and it's super tight, super small. We're just going to go accessibility medium, gets the whole big scroll view treatment, right? Okay, so if it is greater than accessibility medium, we want to do location, detail, view, and we'll initialize that location, detail, view model. That takes in a location, which that's why we passed in this location, right? Because we need to know what location to show. So we're passing that in. Now, we're in the accessibility, right? We're greater than or equal to accessibility medium. So in this case is when we want to do embed in scroll view, okay? Now, else, just give us the regular location detail view, just as we've always done, except we're not going to embed in scroll view, okay? So do a Command B. Now we're getting a bunch of errors here, but let me walk through what's going on. So when I'm returning some view, again, this is Swift UI stuff. Remember, our embed in scroll view, if I go back to the extension here on the UI view, it returns a geometry reader, right? It doesn't return a location detail view, it returns a geometry reader. Now, if I go back to the location list view model, so basically if this happens, I'm returning a geometry reader. If this happens, I'm returning a location detail view. Now in Swift UI, in order to return two different possible views, we need to mark this function at view builder. Now, a great way to explain what a view builder is essentially lets you return a view, but it doesn't matter like which type. So essentially like this can return a geometry reader or this can return a location detail view. And view builders are heavily used in Swift UI. And if you want more details on it, John Sandell has a great article that really dives into the nitty gritty on view builders. I will link to that. But if you want the super simple answer, it allows you to create a function that returns some view and, say maybe we had a situation where we wanted to return our profile view in one case or our location detail view in another. Well, those are two different types of views. So this allows you to do that. It's kind of like a generic view thing, a view builder. It's a great name for it. But anyway, check out John's article if you want a deeper dive in that. But by doing that, we can now call create location detail view in our location list view right here where all this is going on. So let's do that, and then this will conditionally embed it in a scroll view. So instead of our destination being this location detail view, our destination will be view model.create location detail view for location in, how do we know what size category we're in? Remember, I said we're going to reach up into the environment and get that. So we can do at environment, and then we initialize that. We do /.size category. And then we do var size category. Do Command B. Oh, I forgot the Y. I was wondering why I wasn't getting that. Okay, so yes. So we're reaching into our environment, getting whatever our size category is, whatever size category the phone is set at, and that's what we have this variable here. So now we can pass that into our function. So we're creating a location detail view for a location in, and we'll do size category. And then if we go to that function, just to run you through it here, we're going to take this size category that gets passed in. If that size category is greater than or equal to accessibility medium, then we're going to embed it in a scroll view. If it's not greater than or equal to accessibility medium, we're going to just do our normal location detail view. Okay, so let's test this on the iPhone 12 Pro. So this is in normal, remember. So this should work as expected, right? This should look no different than we're used to. Okay, go to Chipotle. Yep, I can scroll the faces. I can't scroll the screen. Okay, now let's test this in accessibility extra, extra large. So we'll go home. Swipe over to settings, go down to accessibility, display and text size, larger text is off. Okay, so I'm going to drag this all the way to the right. I guess I didn't have to do that. I got to hit, okay, so larger accessibility sizes, right? So now it doesn't name them like we're used to, but so this is extra, extra, extra large. This is the highest one. So now we'll go back to home, back to Dub Grub. Okay, so there's our extra, extra large size. And now my whole thing is in a scroll view. So it doesn't fire off the network call. Okay, look at some of our other screen size. Just hide your eyes, hide your eyes. So this extra, extra large on the rest of our screens, we'll go back to this list. Like, look how bad this list is messed up. Again, we're not going to fix all these screens. Take that on as a challenge if you like. But here's Chipotle. now that we are in that extra, extra large size, we get the overall scroll view behavior that we did. So I'm going to stop this. That is the behavior we just did for this create location detail view function, where we are conditionally embedding it in a scroll view based on the size category that our phone is set at. And again, size category is all of the dynamic type settings. Now, if you remember, there's one more place we can get to our location detail view, right? When we tap a map pin annotation, that pulls up the modal. So we're going to have to do this same thing in our map view when we're pulling up that modal, right? We're going to have to conditionally create our location detail view. Now, here's a refactoring discussion, right? We're essentially going to have this same exact code literally copy and pasted into our location map view model. So you may be thinking, hey, I should refactor that, right? That's repetitive code. You're not wrong. However, where are you going to put it? You could create like another helper, manager file that has a bunch of helper functions. You don't really want to make it an extension on something. It feels weird. There's no place to put it, no clean way to refactor it, at least in my mind. So I'm going to be fine having this code duplicated in both places. Now, if I had a lot of functions that were duplicated in both places, then yes, I think I might create some object or some file or whatever that is some sort of helper function for my views, right? But just for one, not quite going to do that yet. Again, just my opinion on the refactoring. So I'm literally going to copy this, go to our location map view, location map view model, and we're going to paste this function down here at the bottom. There we go. Now we need to call it into our location map view. Well, okay, I don't have content size category. It's because I don't have Swift UI imported. So import Swift UI into our location map view model. And then now location map view, instead of we're here in our sheet, right? This navigation view where we have our location detail view. Now remember, our location is our location manager.selected location. Remember that. But now we will do view model.create location detail for location manager.selected location, and force unwrap that. We've already talked about that. In content size category, okay, we don't have that up here in our environment. But if we go back to our location list view, we can copy and paste that. Now, when you're dealing with these large dynamic types, you're probably going to have this pretty much on like every screen. So maybe you can abstract it away. We won't bother with that for right now. But there we go. Environment object size category. And then back down to our sheet where we are going to pass in that size category. And again, the function works the same. So let's test it real quick. So we're going to see these gigantic, try to click on Chipotle, and I'm sure our taps are all messed up too. Hopefully this is Chipotle. Nope, that was Mezcal. But you see, we are in our full-blown scroll view, which is what we wanted, right? And then if I dismiss this, go back to, run it again. I guess I should, I just got to go to settings and change mine. So go home, into settings, large accessibility. Let's turn that off and go back down to normal, which is what we want. Go back, I guess go home. Go back to Dub Grub. It's weird navigating the simulator. Okay, so we're back to like being normal. Click on Chipotle, and then yes, my whole screen is not scrolling, but my faces do scroll. Like that whole screen moving is the modal that's missing, not a scroll view. So yes, okay, so that logic is working as expected. So we'll stop that. Now let's go back to our location detail view here. Get the preview back up and running. All right, so here's our extra large preview. Let's run this. I want to showcase the last thing we're going to fix, which is our grid. Right, so you see, even these short 4-letter names are going off the screen. They're cramped. We got some text truncated here. So what I want to do is I don't want to go 3 across on these larger accessibility sizes. I want to make this just a single column, right? Just one avatar per column. That way the name can go all the way across the screen. We should probably make the avatar bigger in this case, mainly because, and here's my thinking, these are going to be people's faces, and we want them to be recognizable. So large enough so people that are hard of seeing can recognize the face so they know who's here, along with the name. So that's what we're going to do. Single column, and then make the avatar slightly bigger, again, in the case of these larger accessibility dynamic types. So let's stop running our preview, go to our location detail view model. Now, here we have this columns right here, and we have that hard-coded as a 3 columns. Words are hard. So we want to conditionally have this be 3 columns or 1 column, depending on the size category. So we're going to write a similar function where we pass in a size category and do things conditionally based on that size category. So I'm going to do this right at the top because this is like one of the first things that'll run. So we'll do func determine columns for, and then we'll say size category, and that is a content size category, which we have. Must have imported SwiftUI already. And this returns an array of grid items. So what we want to do here is based on this size category, so similar to what we did, we'll say let number of columns equal size category greater than or equal to dot accessibility medium. So if that is true, ternary operator here, if that is true, we want our columns to be 1. If that is false, we want our columns to be 3. Right? So number of columns, hey, if our size category that we pass in is greater than or equal to accessibility medium, we're doing 1 column. If it's less than that, we're doing 3 columns, just like normal. So here we're going to return our array, and then you can initialize an array with repeating count. So I want to repeat grid, basically this, right? This grid item flexible, right? That's the item that I want to repeat. And then how many times do I want to repeat it? Well, if it's large size, once. If it's normal size, 3. But we have that in a variable here called number of columns. So that's how many times I want to repeat it. And I forgot a parentheses right there. Okay, so let's run through that real quick one more time. So we're going to call viewModel determine columns for size category, which we're going to reach into the environment, pass in the size category. It's going to return our array of grid items, which we're going to need. Again, number of columns, that is dependent on if the size category is greater than or equal to, the super large stuff. If it is, 1 column. If it's not, 3 columns. And then we return our array of grid items, flexible, depending on the number of columns. Now, where do we use this function? Well, in our location detail view, here in our grid, where is that at here, right? This for each grid, you see the lazy V grid takes in viewModel.columns. Well, real quick, so I can get Xcode to yell at me, I'm going to delete this columns because we no longer need this anymore because we're determining it with this function. So back to location detail view. Now instead of viewModel.columns, it's viewModel.determine columns for, and then I'm going to need a size category, which I don't, or do I have it? No, I don't have it yet, right? So we need that at environment /size category. That is var size category. Cool. And then that's where we use that down here. So size category. So now in our lazy V grid, instead of passing that hard-coded columns, we're using our function to determine columns for size category. So now let's run it on our iPhone 12 Pro. And I think we're in normal size, right? Yeah, we're not crazy. So Chipotle column, cool. That works. And then now let's I keep stopping it. I just got to go home and then change it. So then we'll go home, settings, larger text. Let's go to accessibility sizes, super duper large. Go back home, back to Dub Grub, and we'll go to our locations, our list, Chipotle. Cool. Okay, so now here, okay, you see we get that single column thing. Now that's it. That's a decent user experience for somebody with this super large text. And you can see how drastically our layout has changed, right? With super duper long. Now we're in this single column row here. We didn't change our buttons. Those are finger, width. I think that's fine. However, our avatars are still a little smaller. So we can just tweak those a little bit and we should be done. So let's stop running this and go down to our avatar view, which is down here. First name avatar view, I'm sorry. And this size here of 64 that we're passing in, we want to make that conditional, again, based on our size category. So we'll do size category. Oh, we don't have that. Okay, yeah, so we are in a subview. I guess you could pass it down in an initializer, or this view can also reach up into the environment as well. So I'm going to go up here, copy our environment access here, and then put that down here in first name avatar view. Right, and then now we can do size category. There we go. Greater than or equal to dot accessibility medium. Okay, if that is true, I want it to be 100. If that is false, 64 was our default. So this 100 is completely subjective. If you want to make it bigger, make it bigger. I don't know, I just chose that. But I basically almost doubled the size of our avatar when we're in these big cases. So now we'll run it on the iPhone 12 Pro, and we should see our avatars slightly bigger, all in that single column grid, right? Okay, Chipotle, scroll down. Now you see our avatars are much bigger and our names are there. And again, that's a nice user experience for somebody that's a little harder seeing that has their text all blown up. Now, still, gotta work on that. That's gonna be rough. But for now, we're gonna call it because this video is already quite long. But like I said, our UI has completely changed and I feel like this is a much better experience for somebody using this dynamic type size. And then, oh boy. Also, the other thing with this, watch this. I'm dreading this video because watch. Let's say we tap on jobs. Oh, look, our modal is in the middle of the whole scroll view. No matter how long our scroll view is, that's where the modal pops up, right? It doesn't pop up in the middle of like our current context, right? It should pop up like down here. That's going to be a pain to handle. Actually, well, it's going to cover like most of the screen, but either way, it's going to come in the center of the scroll view. This one's going to be rough, but let's keep it moving. All right, let's take a look at this monster here. Look at all the stuff we could potentially have to do, right? I kind of mentioned it last video, but we'll review it real quick, right? First of all, I'd have to make the size of the modal pretty much full screen. And then, maybe the first and last name on 2 separate lines. The bio, obviously, we need to stretch. So maybe this would even have to go into a scroll view. I'd have to fix my dismiss button. It's a nightmare. And you can see all the conditionals I would have to do for like every element. It pains me to even like think about it. So anytime I find myself in this situation, I always kind of back up to the beginning and say, okay, how can I not do this? Because I certainly don't want to write that convoluted conditionals everywhere code to adapt this view. Not to mention, that's just the UI, right? When I scroll on my simulator, remember the modal is presented in the middle of the Z stack, right? That's how this works. So it's not even presented like a normal alert. And when I was trying to solve this problem, this is where the light bulb went off. Because I was like, man, I wish this was just a sheet. And then I was like, why wish? You're a developer, you can code, build it, make it a sheet. Like you're allowed, no one's stopping you. So I thought this was a great example of that type of thinking, right? When you're backed into a corner, into a situation where you would have to write some horrible code. Again, go back to the beginning. How can I not do this? How can I do this in a different way? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to present a sheet conditionally, right? If we're in the standard dynamic type stuff, we'll keep it the modal, same as it always is. However, once we get into the accessibility dynamic type, instead of showing the modal, we're going to create a completely new view that has the same information. However, it's going to be a sheet, easily scrollable, a much better user experience for those with a larger dynamic type. So again, when faced with this kind of nightmare situation, don't be afraid to go back and completely rethink things. Okay, so back to the code. We're going to walk through how we're going to do this big picture, and then we'll actually do it. Here we are in our unrefactored location detail view. Soon. We're coming soon. But let's look to where we're presenting this modal here, right? This is in our grid where we tap on our first name avatar view. I'll make my font a little bigger there. So right here's the tap gesture. And remember, how we're doing it is we're setting the selected profile to whichever one we tap. And back in our detail view model, we're doing this did set to have is showing profile modal equals true. That's our current implementation. Just as a reminder, what we're going to do here, though, we're going to have a function that does some logic that basically says, hey, if we're in the larger accessibility dynamic types, show the sheet. If we're not, show the modal, right? So we're going to have to kind of rewrite that a little bit. But that is the logic and idea of how we're going to make this happen. So first things first, we need the new UI for our new profile modal sheet. Well, no, I'm just going to call it profile sheet view because it's not a modal anymore. So in our location detail view folder, I'm going to create a new file. And we're going to call SwiftUI view, hit next. I'm going to call it profile sheet view, hit create. Now you'll notice I don't use a ton of comments in my code, and comments are a very subjective thing. Some developers say comment everything all over the place, and then there's just comments everywhere. Some developers say make your code readable and you shouldn't need comments, and there's a huge debate on who's right or who's wrong. Not getting into that debate. Do you for your personal style. Just for me, in my opinion, my preference, I like to use minimal comments because again, I just don't like all the clutter in my code. Personal preference, just me. It's fine to disagree. But this is a case where I would use comments because I want to let people know that the profile sheet view, this is specifically made for large accessibility dynamic type. This is the only reason this exists. So I want to be clear about that so it doesn't get used in another context. So up here, I would do that. I would say alternative profile modal view for larger dynamic type sizes. We present this as a sheet instead of a small pop up. Again, just extra context there. So like I said, my philosophy on comments, I use them sparingly, and I think this is a case where it is definitely needed to let people know, hey, this is why we're doing this. Now, to make this UI, I'm going to go to our profile modal view just to make sure I have everything and basically take our whole body here. So that's from here up. Basically, I'm going to take this whole Z stack, copy that into the sheet, and paste it where this text is. Now, of course, I'll get my preview going here so we can see this happen along the way. Make that smaller, 75%, hit resume. Well, of course, we have all kinds of errors because if I go back to my profile modal view, I do need a profile. So I'm going to copy that and bring that over. I don't need it showing profile modal. We don't need that, but I do need the profile. Now we can start deleting stuff to get Xcode to stop yelling at me. So this our X button, dismiss button, we're not going to have that because again, we're going to present this as a sheet. We're going to present it in a navigation view, and then we're going to have the little dismiss button in the navigation bar, just like we did for our location detail view on our map screen. When you tap on the map annotation, that pops up. Same concept here. So this whole overlay button, we do not need. So get rid of that. And that should have Xcode stop yelling at us. Okay, no, previews, of course. We are missing our profile. So let's get the mock profile in there, right? DDG profile. We initialize that with a record, and that is a mock data.profile. Same old stuff we've been doing. Okay, now the preview should be up and running, and it should look exactly like our current modal view. And there it is. Yep, that's expected. Now is where we start tweaking all of this stuff. So again, I'm not going for anything that looks great. And here's why, at least my mindset is somebody that has this super large type, they're not concerned with cute, whimsical design, right? They can't be when their type is that big. So I'm going to make this screen as straightforward as possible. So essentially, it's just going to be one VStack. So let's create that, and I'm going to slowly start copying and paste stuff in here. So our preview is going to be all messed up for a little bit, but that's fine. So I'm going to create my root VStack here. And at the top of the VStack, I want this image, right? We know that. So I'm going to cut that, paste here. And again, while I'm doing this transfer, again, I'm doing the transfer to make sure I have everything, but my previews are going to be all out of whack. So I want the image at the top, and then, yep, first name, last name, right? So we'll cut that text, paste it here, and then company name under that. So yep, we're going to just cut and paste everything we need here. And then below that is our bio. Cut the bio, paste that there, and then now we can get rid of this Z stack that is all the leftover stuff here. So now we should just have the remains, which is, again, still not what we're looking for, but we're not done tweaking yet. So let's just go top to bottom, how we want to do this here. So, well, first of all, let's change our preview to accessibility extra large so we can see what we're working with here. Okay, now we do want to put this whole thing in a scroll view, right? So I'm going to minimize the VStack. I need to get better at this when I'm writing in SwiftUI. This whole code folding thing is great for SwiftUI, and I don't utilize it enough, but we just did there. I'm trying to get in the practice of it in real time. Okay, so here we are in a scroll view. We still don't have everything looking right. So we have a lot of modifiers we don't quite need, right? So, okay, offset on this image, we did that to push the image up. We don't need that in this circumstance, and that's why our image is like pushed up, right? You see where the red square is? We're at offset minus 120, so our image is all the way, through the top. So let's get rid of offset. I'm actually going to get rid of the shadow as well. If you want to keep the shadow, go for it. I'm going to get rid of it. So we're good there on our scroll view VStack image. We'll keep it hidden from accessibility. Now, first and last name, I probably want this to be 2 separate lines. So what I can do is get rid of this line limit of 1. And then this minimum scale factor, remember we did this so the text would shrink so it would fit. However, we don't want to shrink the text because they are at least not this much, right? Shrinking it all the way 75%. Maybe we'll shrink it 90 to allow us a little bit of breathing room. But again, they wanted super large text, so you don't want to shrink it too much. And again, I would even, be fine with you completely getting rid of the minimum scale factor. We're going to leave it in just to allow us a little bit, but yeah, that's, personal preference. Now, again, company name, let's get rid of the line limit because we do want this to wrap if need be. And you can see our preview updating in real time. And accessibility, fine. Bio, line limit, again, not 3. Get rid of that. And then we're going to get rid of the padding on our bio because we're going to put the padding on the overall VStack. Because again, this screen is super straightforward. We're not worried about a cute little design when our text is this big. So on the VStack, we'll add some padding just so it's not up against the edges of the phone. And then things feel a little cramped to me right now. So I'm going to, on the VStack, give it a spacing. And I just kind of pulled 20 out of thin air just to let it breathe a little bit. So that's what I did for that. Okay, now that our basic UI is ready, let's go to our location detail view to where we're, let's get rid of, well, we'll keep the preview up, why not? To where we're actually using this, right? And this is on the, no, let's get rid of preview. I don't like my code wrapping like that. So here's where the magic is happening, right? On tap gesture, we're setting the selected profile, and that shows the modal. However, we need to change that. So into the location detail view, we're gonna have to get rid of this did set because we're gonna have to pass in a size category so we know which type of profile to show. Are we showing the profile sheet or are we showing the profile modal? And here in this like computed property, can't really pass in like a parameter. So we're going to switch this to a function. So we're going to go down here. We'll do it at the bottom. We'll do func show profile, and that is a DDG profile in, and then size category, and that is a content size category. And now here we're going to say if size category is greater than or equal to dot accessibility medium. So this is just our larger accessibility sizes. In this case, we want to show the sheet. Well, if we go back up to the top, we have is showing profile modal false. So let's copy that and we'll paste that, because now we want to say is showing profile sheet. Right, we're gonna have two different variables, right? If we're showing the sheet, we're gonna flip is showing profile sheet to true. That is in turn gonna show our sheet on the screen. If we're in the standard dynamic type stuff, we're gonna have is showing modal to true, and that's gonna show the modal. So that's how we're differentiating. And while we're here, let's get rid of this selected profile did set. We don't use this anymore because we're putting this into the function. So now that is just a variable that is still an optional. And back down to the function here. So we're going to say is showing profile sheet equals true, and then else is showing profile modal equals true. Okay, so now let's go back and call this function in our location detail view, right? Instead of this on tap gesture, we are going to do view model dot show profile, and that is whatever profile we tap. That's what we have up here in the for each of our grid, right? Our grid is iterating through our array of profiles, and for each profile, we're creating an avatar view. Each avatar view for each profile has a tap gesture. So that is the profile that we're passing in. And then in size category, which we already have, just as a reminder, up here when we did the dynamic type on the overall location detail view last video. Yeah, they're all running together. So many videos. Okay, back to our tap gesture here. So we're doing viewModel.show profile in size category. And again, what happens in the view model? If the size category is bigger than accessibility medium, we're showing the sheet. And then if not, we're showing the modal. However, we haven't set up our sheet yet. So down to the location detail view, down towards the bottom, we'll do it under the alert. We'll do it above the alert. We'll do dot sheet is presented and then content. So the is presented is $viewModel.is showing profile sheet. And then the content is our profile sheet view. And then we got to initialize that with a profile, and that is our view model.selected profile. We'll force unwrap that because back in the location detail, we forgot this one little piece. Good thing I went back and did this. So we need to do selected profile equals profile. So that means this variable up here, we set a value to it, and then right below that, we're flipping, is showing profile sheet to true and is showing profile modal to true, depending, right? And that relies on having a value on this, and we're setting that value right above it. So in our location detail view, I believe I can clean this up a little bit. I don't think I need the content. I think I can just close the parentheses out right there, delete that, and I believe that is good. Okay, so before we test this, that wraps it up. One last quick run through just to sum it all up. When the user taps on the profile face, we fire off view model show profile, which is whichever one they tapped, and then we pass in the size category from the phone on the location detail view model. Here we are setting our selected profile equal to whatever profile we passed in, and then we're checking on our accessibility type here and showing the sheet accordingly and the modal accordingly. And then back in the location detail view, if is showing sheet gets flipped to true, that is when this fires off and we show our profile sheet view, which is set up for that larger type. Now, forgot to do something. See, this is why I do the reviews also for myself. So I need a navigation view here. Remember, we have to handle our dismiss button. So I'm gonna put this in a navigation view, and then I'm gonna go back to our location map view because this is the same code. Also as a refresher, right? Remember, we're presenting the sheet for the location detail view. We put it in a navigation view. Here we're creating the proper detail view based on the size category. Remember, we had this toolbar for the dismiss. So I'm going to copy that and then paste it on the profile sheet view. And then of course we don't have is showing detail view. This is showing profile sheet. right? So we set that to false when dismiss is pressed. And then the last thing on the navigation view, we want to add the accent color of .brand primary. So our dismiss button is that teal color we showed. Okay, so now that I've gone through that review and I caught my pre-bug, if you will, I'm throwing it into a navigation view. Let's run this. I believe we're already in the super large type on our simulator. So yep, there we are. There's that nightmare as well. So locations, Chipotle. Okay, now we'll click on we'll click on Sean. Now I should see a sheet pop up with the view that we just put in. So click on Sean. There we go. There's a sheet, and you see it's in a scroll view, so we can do that, right? We got the image, Sean Allen, my company, bio that I can scroll when it gets very long, and I can hit this dismiss button, and we're good to go. Now, if I go to home, settings, and then take my accessibility. See, even like Apple's own things look rough. It's very hard to make it look good on this large size. That's why I say kind of design kind of goes out the window. You go for functionality and usability. So display and text size. Larger text is on. Nope, let's go back. Oh, no. Yeah, I want to go back to normal, which is this middle one. Cool. Home. And then Dub Grub. Okay, here we are. Okay, our network call's not firing off when we come back. That's fine. That's like a super optimization with like did enter foreground, did enter background, doing stuff. Anyway, now I tap on Sean. I should see my old modal. Yep, there we go. So you see we are conditionally showing the sheet when we're super large, which is a completely separate view, and we're showing the modal on the normal one. So it turns out that nightmare of a view that we had, when you kind of go back to the beginning and rethink things and you're open to an alternative approach, actually wasn't that hard of a solution. And again, I thought going through this exercise was a great example of that type of thinking. Now, that wraps up the section on dynamic type. Of course, we didn't do 100% dynamic type, right? Because if you really wanted to be thorough, you would test it on all, I think there's like 10 of them, different variations, all different screen sizes, right? Remember I said this is very tedious and long process. The point of this dynamic type section was to show you a non-trivial screen. I'm not saying the screen I'm looking at is insanely complicated, but it's also certainly not a simple, straightforward screen. So hopefully you got some examples on, how to think about adapting your UI for dynamic type. And then we went through a couple, techniques, right? Changing our grid view to one column instead of two columns, how we adapted our description, and then how we completely rethought our modal view for the large types. So that type of thinking, I hope, gave you a good example to tackle dynamic type in your future projects. And that also wraps up the second 90% section, where even though we did a lot of work, right? We did voiceover, we did all the dynamic type, haptic feedback, a launch screen. We barely even scratched the surface on the second 90%. And that was my goal for this section, was to let you know what exists, what's out there, and to help prepare you for your next project so you're expecting this second 90%, right? You're not caught off guard, because that's what happened to me, happens to many developers. They think they're done, and then they get smacked in the face with this second 90%, and they get discouraged, and it's demoralizing. So hopefully this section prepared you for your next project. Now it's time for the fun stuff, the optimization and refactoring section. And I've done this section in previous courses, and it's been a favorite for many students out there. And a big reason for that is when we're going through and building the project as a whole, you're focused on just getting things working. We kind of skim over the small stuff. Well, this section is where we get to go back, and focus on that little stuff, the refactoring. Maybe we can write things a better way. Maybe we can improve performance. And this section is heavily influenced by the comments during the pre-sale. Because I don't claim to write perfect code. No developer should. And I make mistakes just like everybody else. Or maybe I don't, write things the most optimal way. And it's great having, 1,000 developers come in of various different skill sets to come in and kind of like review your code, right? Whether it's a beginner asking questions that, lets me know, okay, maybe I didn't explain that clear enough. Or people that are experienced come in and say, hey, here's a more optimal way to write this. And that's great. I mean, it's like having 1,000 developers give you a code review, right? So naturally, they're going to see things you don't, or see things in a different way. So that's what this section is for. We go back, we focus on this little stuff, and screen by screen, we're going to go back, refactor, and implement better ways to write things and optimize our code a bit. So I do want to say thank you to everybody that's commented so far and recommended improvements or different ways to do things in our code. And if you're watching this after I've already done the optimization section and you see a better way to write something, don't be afraid to comment on that as well, because this section is what I add to over time as new things pop up. So, 6 months from now, I may add a new optimization video with various optimizations that have popped up. So this is kind of like a living section. Now, a quick note though, if you are watching this a bit into the future, when iOS 15 and Xcode 13 are official, I will have a what's new in iOS 15 section later in the course. So save those iOS 15 comments for that section in case I missed something there, because that's where we're gonna handle all that stuff. All right, let's get to it. Over the next couple of videos, we're gonna go screen by screen and refactor and optimize. Now, a little bit of a warning, the nature of these videos, we're gonna be kind of hopping around a little bit because we're gonna be fixing little stuff here or there. So just a warning on that, but I do try to keep each video contained within this section. For example, this video is all about the map view and the onboard view. So I try to stay in there, and I'll keep each video as compartmentalized as I can so we're not jumping all over the project. And to start, there are some things we're gonna kind of check on every section of the app. So the first thing in that part is a little bit of extra safety in our view models. So right now, let's go to the location map view model. Right, so I have my final class location map view model. I can access my location map view model from anywhere, right? So let me go to my profile view, just as an example, right? I could, if I wanted to, do @state object private var VM equals location, whatever, detail view model. The point remains, right? I can put these view models on any screen. Well, your view models should be very tightly coupled to one screen, right? You shouldn't share view models between views. So a little extra bit of safety we can do so you can't do that is on our location map view model. You can encapsulate this in an extension on the location map view. That way only the location map view has access to this location map view model. Again, a little bit of extra safety there. So to do that, you can do extension location map view, open and close the curly braces, and then just yank your whole view model, do Command X, Command V, and paste it in there. Now the spacing, how you want to do this is, subjective, just visually. I like to have this one space here. I don't know. To me, that feels like pretty cramped. So I like to have the one space there. Perfectly subjective. The point remains, we have encapsulated our view model in our location map view. So that is the only thing that has access to it. Again, a little bit of extra safety. 2 returns there. Get rid of this space, a little bit of cleanup, but that's what we're gonna do for every screen in each video. So that's part 1. Another thing we're gonna do for each view is a private and file private audit. Basically, I'm gonna go look at all my functions and see if I can mark them private or file private. And in our location map view, get locations, get checked in counts, these are all utilized outside of this file. So I don't want to mark them private or file private. And by the way, this is mostly for safety, kind of like what we're doing by encapsulating the view model in our view. So, only one view can access it. This way you can't access stuff you're not supposed to, right? A good example of that we'll do in a future video is on the location list view. Look at the location cell, right? We're only using this additional profiles view in this cell. So I guess I'll get a little ahead of myself here for the example. I guess that way we won't have to do this in the location list view video, but you would do file private here, right? So that way only this file has access to additional profiles view. So you notice how we refactored a lot of our views and have a bunch of views like down here at the bottom that were only used in this view. Well, marking them file private will ensure they're only used within the view that you have them. Now, of course, if you want additional profile views used in multiple places, and you'd probably put it in its own file somewhere. Okay, so the file private and private audit on each section is what we're gonna do. Again, we went to a different section on this location list just to show you an example, but we're gonna do that for every screen. So back to our location map view model, that's fine. Our location map view, we're not using like any other views down here, so that's good. Okay, so our private file private audit is done. The next audit I want to do is to make sure we're handling all of our error cases with alerts, and then also refactoring our alert a little bit. So on the location map view, if we look at our alert, right, we have this 2 lines of code, right? We have alert, and then we get our alert item, and then we do, alert, title, message, dismiss button, right? And we're using this in every single screen. So it's 3 lines of boilerplate code. Well, we can do better than this, and we can refactor this. And shout out to Stuart Lynch. If you don't follow his YouTube channel, check that out. He pointed this little optimization out. However, I do have a caveat on the optimization that I want to talk about, but let's write the code first, and then I'll tell you why I'm fine with the code. So we're going to need this alert, right? So I'm going to copy that, and then in our utilities, our alert item, on our alert item struct, we're going to create a variable, computer property, called alert, and that is going to be of type alert, and it's going to return this. except it's not alert item dot title. It's just title. It's not alert item dot message. It's just message. It's not alert item dot dismiss button. It's just dot dismiss button. That way we can just call, when we get our alert item back in that alert closure, we can just call dot alert on it to clean it up. Okay, let me show you that and I'll explain it. So back to the location map view. So what I can do is $0 to get access to this. And that basically, abstracts this away. So we'll get rid of this here and then get rid of this. And I can do $0 and then we'll close that off. And then there we go. Now our alert item is not 3 lines of code. It's a clean 1-liner. Now, let me talk about this caveat that I was talking about on this solution. I could see the argument where this line of code is a little confusing, right? Alert item, alert content, $.alert. Like I get why that could be confusing at first. And if we were only using this in one place, I probably wouldn't do this. I would prefer the spelled out version to show what's going on. However, here's where I think this is a net positive for the code base. Again, this alert is some boilerplate that we're using on, I think, every single screen. So even though there might be a little bit of a learning curve to learn this line of code, I think it's a net benefit for the code base because once a user of your code base learns it, it's much cleaner, much easier to use on every screen that we're going to use this. So again, small learning curve up front, but benefits in the long term that I think will outweigh that small learning curve up front. I know that was probably a very in-depth way of thinking about one line of code, but that's how I think about things in the code base. I'm okay with something being confusing if it's worth it in the long run, right? Again, if we were only using this in one spot, I don't think that confusion would be worth it. So, okay, that's my caveat on that. And we will be basically refactoring all of our alerts on every screen to this one line of code to clean things up. Okay, so that wraps up what we're gonna do for every view. Again, on every view, we're gonna encapsulate the view model. And every view, we're gonna do an audit on the private file private. And on every view, we're gonna clean up our alerts. Okay, so that section is done. Now let's talk about the view specific stuff. So first of all, let's talk about the previews. Go to Canvas. We can get our map up and running with our map annotations and everything. We just have to inject our environment object in our preview on the location map view, right? Once this preview is done running, it's going to give me an error saying it doesn't have the location manager, right? If I click this little I, that's what it says, missing location manager. So cool. So I can do .environment object and then just initialize a new location manager there. And then now it has it, and then we'll go to 75. And then when I run the preview, we get our map, and then we get our map pins. Cool, good to go. Okay, so we'll stop that. That's just a way to get your map running on the preview. Minimize that. Now let's talk about some optimization with this VStack here. So actually, pull the preview back out so you can see what I'm talking about here. We'll run it. Okay, so I'm talking about this Dub Grub logo at the top. Well, you see, we put a VStack in there with a spacer below it to push it all the way up. Well, actually, we can improve on that. We can get rid of this VStack altogether. So get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of the spacer at the bottom. I'm going to get rid of this comment because we're not using that. I'm going to put the shadow on one line because that's my preference and move the logo view up. So now we just basically got rid of that VStack. But our logo is in the middle. Okay, so our Z stack here has an alignment property that we can use. So alignment, and then we can do .top. So that will align the the Z stack. I say that, I get those mixed up a lot. You've probably seen that in videos where I say V stack when I mean Z stack. It's just V and Z instead. Anyway, the Z stack has an alignment of .top. So as you can see, it aligns the elements in the Z stack to the top, and you can see that's the desired outcome. So again, that cleaned up the code a little bit where we don't need to have that extra V stack. Okay, now I can get rid of the preview, hopefully. Let's address this wall of text here. Personal style, preference, right? I find walls of text like this to be tricky to read, right? Especially when they're super long, like this, like horizontally long, I mean. So we're gonna address this here. First things first, I'm gonna put the accessibility label in the DDG annotation view, and that'll clean up one line. And it'll also clean up this line right here where we can just pass in our number parameter that we pass in. So you'll see. Now, in general, I'm going to try to put our accessibility labels like inside the actual view it goes in. Now, I'm not going to be able to do that every time, but as a rule of thumb, that's what I'm going to try to do for the style of the code base. But it is going to be tricky to be 100% consistent with this, but that's going to be the goal here. So I'm going to cut this, and then let's go into our DDG annotation. So command, click on that. And we will, at the bottom of the V stack here, right, there it is, we will paste it. Now, again, I don't need this because I don't have access to the view model and all that stuff, but we're passing that in with number, right? The number variable that we passed in is what we get here. So now my accessibility label can be down here, and then I'm gonna not Remember we did the change between people and persons and that logic. If you want to do that, go for it. Maybe you'd have to give your DDG annotation view a view model that has that logic in it. To save myself the time, I'm just going to get rid of people. That way it reads, Chipotle 6 checked in, Chipotle 0 checked in, right? You kind of get rid of that altogether. Your choice on how you want to handle that. But back to our location map view, we're working on cleaning up this wall of text. Now that's about all we can do there. I mean, I guess stylistically, you could, maybe put the parameters down here and then maybe like do that. I don't know. I mean, there's many different ways you can do it. I'm going to just put a space above the Z stack. Right, so that just makes this little bit of wall of text. It's only 3 lines, not too bad. Again, this is all personal preference. That's how I'm going to go with it. There's many ways to solve this one. So a quick review of this view overall. Again, we cleaned that up. Everything looks pretty clean. I mean, there's not a ton going on in this view. I mean, if you look, it's only like 28, 30 lines of code, something like that. So not a ton going on. So I think that looks fine. Quick review of the view model. Again, pretty straightforward. There's only 3 functions. Good to go there. Now let's shift to the onboard view. So let's talk about some things here. Okay, so onboard view, again, another relatively small view. We did the bulk of the refactoring with our onboard info view. That took out a lot of the repeated code. So I'm fine here, except here's a file private, right? Because we're only using the onboard info view in this file. So we want to mark this file private. Again, that is so we can't accidentally use the onboard info view in some other view because we don't want that. And again, if you did want that, you don't use file private. So yeah, I think we're good here. Again, this is a relatively straightforward small view. There is stuff we could do, like we could refactor out this HDAC for the X dismiss button. So it just says X dismiss button up here. But again, I talked about this before. It's already super small and straightforward. If this was a long, complex view, I would definitely take advantage of that. But again, I'm fine leaving it on these smaller views. And now that I think about it, I forgot to check on our custom annotations here because this is part of the map, right? I don't think anything's going on here. Map balloon, we've already revisited that. That's fine. DDG annotation. We were just kind of in there. What happened here? Extracted, okay. I don't know if that happened in your code as well. I have no idea how that happened. I didn't type that. That's for damn sure. So just delete that and maybe Xcode little bug, do a Command B. Let me run the app on the simulator real quick to make sure our annotations are still showing up. It should be. Yep, here we are. Okay, we're good. I have no idea what that was. Curious if that was in your code as well. But again, quick review. Like I've said 100 times now, normally something with this many modifiers, I would want to refactor out. But again, this is a little 20-line code view. I'm fine in that scenario. So we're good there. Now let's go to our app view, right? Or app tab view, I should say here. So we'll go to the app tab view and we're going to optimize this a little bit. Well, first of all, this does have a view model. So again, we want to encapsulate this view model in extension app tab view. And then a little tricky here thing. Watch, you'll see. I'm going to bring our extension in there too, because we put an extension on this for the core location stuff. Now I'm going to get an error and real quick, I like my space up here and then we'll bring that up top. So basically it says I don't have access to this, CL location manager delegate and declaration is only valid at file scope. I can't have an extension within the scope, of another extension, right? So you may think, oh, okay, no big deal. Let me just cut and we'll paste this out here. Cool. Well, now I don't know where app tab view model is because I encapsulated that within our view up top, right? So only the app tab view has access to that. So what we can do here is just cut this function, basically get rid of our extension because it is only a 3-line function, like no big deal. And then we'll have to move this conformance up to that. So we essentially just got rid of that little extension, conform to the protocol up here. Now, here's where I wouldn't do that. Let's say we were doing a ton with the CL location manager, right? And our CL location manager delegate extension had a ton of stuff in it, right? There was like 10 functions and there were a lot of logic. I wouldn't do this in that case. In that case, I probably just wouldn't encapsulate it in the tab view and keep what we had. Xcode, why are you yelling at me? This should work. Okay, let's take a look here. Can I find check? Oh, I think I'm not in the right scope. Little curly brace error there, right? Yeah, now I'm in the scope of my view model. So again, we kind of just got rid of that little extension, put it in our app tab view model for there. Okay, the last thing we want to do is we are using user defaults here for our, has seen onboard view storage. And I remember when I gave the challenge, I said user defaults, not app storage. That was a complete oversight on my part. App storage can work. You just have to use a did set on it. And I'll explain. So let's actually convert this to using app storage, and then we'll walk through it. Now, why would you want to use app storage when user defaults works perfectly fine? Well, app storage was introduced in iOS 14. It is now like the SwiftUI way to do things. It is probably how user defaults will be accessed via SwiftUI moving forward. So to kind of get with the current events of our code, we're going to switch it to app storage. Now, essentially what app storage is just a SwiftUI wrapper around user defaults. So we're still using user defaults under the hood. Again, it's just the SwiftUI way to write it. So our functionality is not going to change at all. In fact, because it is user defaults under the hood, we can still use our same key and we're still going to be accessing that. We're not like creating a new key. So we're going to reset all of our, has seen onboard view. So, existing users are going to see the onboard view. Not going to happen, really just a different syntax. Same stuff is going on. So let's minimize that. Below our at publish, we'll do at app storage. And I don't have that, so we'll import Swift UI. That will help. Do Command B, that should work now. Well, we're not completely done yet. And then we initialize that with our string here of has seen onboard view. Again, we're just going to use the same stuff here. Now, if we did change this key, even a little bit, even if we just added an S at the end, that is going to be a new key. That is going to completely reset everybody seeing their onboard view. But as long as we're using the same key, again, we're still in the same user defaults. So this will be a variable called has seen onboard view. We're going to default it to false. And again, we want a did set on it. So did set. And again, I'll walk through this and explain it. So when we set this value, and real quick, if we look at our run startup checks, just as a refresher, the only time we're setting this value is when we run our startup checks. And if it's false, then we set it to true. So this is only going to happen once, right? That's why you only see the onboard screen one time. Because every other time this gets checked, it will evaluate to true because it's pulling it from the app storage, which is our user defaults. So to get Xcode to stop yelling at me, let's get rid of our user defaults line of code here, 23, and then also line 27 is our user defaults code. Let's get rid of that. So now in our did set, we want to set is showing onboard view equal to has seen onboard view. And here below this, we can do has seen onboard view equals true. And we can actually delete this because we're handling this in the did set. So do that. Now, the reason I missed this before is because I was trying to tie this has seen onboard view to the is showing onboard view. And what was happening was when I was dismissing the onboard view, that was switching is showing onboard view to false, which was also switching has seen onboard view to false. So again, a complete oversight on my part where I didn't even think about doing the did set to where you're only changing that when it is set, and we're only setting it the first time through once it is false. So this handles all of that. And again, I think of app storage as just a SwiftUI wrapper around user defaults. When we access has seen onboard view variable, we're actually accessing the value that is at the has seen onboard view key in user defaults. So again, a nice SwiftUI way to write that. Now, while we're here, let's run through our app tab view model, do our little private file private. Okay, run startup checks is, I need that outside of it. Check if location service is enabled. I'm sorry. I know I checked for that outside of it. Check location authorization. That is private because we're only using that here. Okay, good. And this is a delegate method, so we're fine there. App tab view. We can clean this up a little bit because our onboard view, we don't actually need to pass a binding to is showing onboard view. So this will clean up this call site a little bit and our onboard view. So go here. So instead of having is showing onboard view, we can actually do our environment object here. So environment and then /presentation mode. And then that would be a var called presentation mode. And then here in the button, so we're not actually saving lines of code on our onboard view, but we're cleaning up the call site, you'll see here. So we can actually do presentation mode.wrapped value.dismiss. So again, that's reaching up into the environment, just dismissing whatever view we're presenting, which in this case is our onboard view sheet. So now back to the app tab view. So now when we call this onboard view, we don't need to pass in this line of code. So you can see we just present onboard view. Again, just cleans up the call site a bit. And let's test this real quick. I believe the iPhone 11 Pro Max is one I never use. So I should see our onboard view pop up, I hope. I don't think I went, okay, it failed. What's going on? I forgot something. Oh yeah, previews. Now you know my love-hate relationship with previews. Now we don't need this is showing onboard view in the preview. and then Command B. Did I mess anything up elsewhere? Nope. Okay, now we should be good. I'm telling you, those damn previews. Okay, yep, here we are. We saw the modal, right? And then if I hit this, I'm still dismissing it using presentation mode. Yep, our location stuff's still working. We didn't change anything with that. Okay, so cool. We've finished that onboard view. The last thing that I forgot, let's go back to our, look at all these tabs I have open. By the way, when you're refactoring and moving stuff around, these tabs up at the top are going to be a lot. So I want to go to my location map view model here. And you'll notice, let's get rid of this. Let's go back to our navigator, get things looking normal. Here in get checked in counts, we just have a comment for our error. We're not showing anything right here. And again, this is why I recommend when you do this audit, kind of go back and make sure you're handling errors, because it's very common during development to just put a quick comment here, I'll fix this later. And very often you forget to come back and fix it later like we did here. So doing this kind of stuff is good. So we need to create another alert here to say, hey, you know, we couldn't get the number of checked in people here. So back to our alert item, we'll create another alert item. So we'll copy and paste it down here. It is in our map view section, of course, and we'll just call it checked in count. Make sure our equal signs are lined up, and we'll just say server error. Delete all this. Unable to get the number of people checked into each location. Please check your internet connection and try again. There. Simple little error message there. Okay, so back to our location map view model. Now we can do alert item equals alert context dot checked in count. So that will show that. Okay. Okay, I was about to do the wrap up. Nope, we have to implicitly capture self. And we're going to do a video in this optimization section all about the weak self stuff, so you can learn that. And we'll do a little audit on that as well. So that wraps up our map, onboarding screen, and app tab view, kind of like the initial screens of our app, the optimizations. And again, we bounced around a little bit, but it's just the nature of the videos. And in this type of optimization audit, you should kind of do, right, because you're always going to be adding new screens, new features, kind of do this audit every once in a while just to keep your code base, clean, cleanly, nice and optimized, because it is very easy to neglect this for a long time. And then you've added a ton of new screens and you just get behind on it, and then your code base just slowly starts to deteriorate over time. So I want to preach this maintenance stuff of your code base is very important. Moving on to our location list view. Okay, let's do the every screen stuff first. All right, so location list view model, we're going to encapsulate this into our extension, again, for the extra little bit of safety of our location list view way down here. Okay, and then we'll yank this whole class into the extension. In my personal preference, I like the space there, and then we can, bunch these up. 2 spaces in between functions we hadn't adhered to there. Okay, again, that little extra bit of safety there. Let's do the file private audit here. Yep, this is being used outside, this is being used outside. So nothing in the view model should be file private. Location list. Nothing there. We only have one thing. Location cell. We got ahead of ourselves. I already did this one, but yet we want to make our additional profiles view file private. Other than that, we are good to go in that regard. Now let's talk about our alert here. So location list view. We don't even have an alert. So I guess that's phase 1. So in our location list view model, here's why we need an alert. Right now we're getting our checked in profiles dictionary to where we're showing all the avatars. We're just doing a print, right? Well, we need to actually handle that alert. So let's create that published variable at published. And again, this is the same thing we have on like every screen. So we're just rewriting that alert item, which is of type alert item, and it's an optional. And let's go to our location map view to do some copying and pasting here of this. Remember, I said this boilerplate alert that we're going to be using on every screen. So we'll copy that location list. Put it, we'll do it after the on appear. So there we go. Now that I have an alert, back to the location list view model, I need an alert context, right? So I need alert item equals alert context dot. We don't have one for this, right? I mean, checked in count, I say specifically I'm getting the counts because that's for our badge numbers. So I do need a slightly different one for this one because we're just getting all the checked in profiles. So we'll comment this out for now. I'll leave it there. Xcode's going to yell at me either way because if I comment it out, it's going to say you need like a break statement or something in there. So we'll live with it for now. Back to our utilities alert. We're going to need a whole new section actually. So, right, we have map view, profile view, location detail view. So this will be our location list view here. So I will copy this part because I want the section header. And then, well, I like to keep these like in kind of order. So we'll do it under map, right? So I do map view and location list view. Let me scroll up here. Location list view errors. Now this is not invalid phone number. This will be unable to get checked in. Don't we already have unable to get checked in profiles? Unable to get checked in status. Yeah, we do have unable to get checked in profiles. What does this say? We're unable to get the users checked into this location at this time. So this is for like a specific location. Ours is going to be slightly different because this is when we can't get our whole list, right? That has all the profiles checked into all locations. So, you know, we're going to use a slight variation of this. So we'll say unable to get all checked in profiles, which is going to make this longer. And we're going to mess up our equal signs. Life's rough. Okay, so unable to get all checked in profiles. Naming's hard. We'll bring this back, tab it over, and then yes, I am going to take the 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, I don't know, time me, pull out your stopwatch to line up my equal signs. Again, this is the annoying part of the equal sign lineup. I think it is worth the 15 seconds, whatever, 20 seconds maybe, it took me longer. And then we'll do Command A, Control I, line everything up. Good to go. Okay, back to our location list view model. Now we're not doing .checked in count, we're doing unable to get all checked in profiles. And again, we need to implicitly capture self. Like I said, we'll talk about that in a future video. But that is our alert audit, right? We added our alert, first of all, but the main thing is we got this, neatly down to one line, so that's good. Okay, so now let's talk about the view specific stuff we can do. Well, our location list view, like I said, is not a lot going on here, only a few lines of code. Now, this is where I talked about being consistent with trying to get all the accessibility stuff like inside the view, so it's not out here. However, because we're doing that tricky voice thing with our voiceover summary, I need access to the view model in that logic. So I'm going to keep this here, and here's why. Because this is what, 14 lines of code? Like, it's hardly anything. Because the alternative would be to either move this create voice summary function onto our cell and have that there. And then you have the discussion, do I create a view model for my cell to have this? I don't know. I just would much prefer, because this is such a simple screen, I'm just going to leave that there. Again, maybe I would change my tune if this was a long, complex screen and confusing, but again, it's simple. So now let's go to the cell. We can do a little bit here. Again, we've already done our file private stuff on the additional profiles view, but let's talk about this additional profiles view. Remember on our badge, if I go back to our DDG annotation, custom views, DDG annotation, remember we basically put a max of 99 on our badge. We want to do the same thing for our +2, +5, +99 in our location list view. So we're just going to do min, number, comma 99. This same syntax in our location cell. So here the number is going to be min, open parentheses, and we'll close the parentheses, the minimum of profiles.count -4 or 99. So that way our list view can't show like plus 10,000, right? Our UI is not set up to handle the number 10,000. So we'll cap it at 99, and that lets people know like, hey, there's a hell of a lot of people at this place. Now, another thing we can do, let me pull up the UI. Let's get rid of all this iPhone 12 Max to walk you through this here. So Dub Grub. Okay, so let's go to our list. Let's go to Chipotle. Okay, well, look, Chipotle has 6 people. So we see our avatars and then +2. That makes sense. But let me check out a Chipotle, and you can see now, if we go back to Grub Spots, now I'm checked out. Now it shows 4 avatars and a +1. Well, something we could do, instead of showing a +1 here, like when there's exactly 5 people checked in, we could just show the 5th avatar, right? There's no need to say +1 when there's only one more, right? However, when it is +2, right, I'll check back in, it does make sense. We'll do a little refresh here. That's again the CloudKit database not indexing quick enough. Remember we talked about that in the iOS 15 update. We're going to implement a pull to refresh to get that. But now +2 or +15, that makes sense. So I guess the user experience question would be, what's better? Should we show like +1 or the avatar? I think reasonable people can disagree on this. My personal take, I think showing +1 is still fine because it's consistent. You can imagine if all these places had many, many people checked in, right? And every cell looked like Chipotle, essentially. Well, sometimes you would see like maybe AC Kitchen and Lounge had plus 17, Chipotle had plus 2, Grace's Cafe and Deli had plus 24, Mezcal had plus 7, but then Original Joe's didn't have the plus and it just had the 5 avatars. I actually think that's kind of confusing. Like, yeah, you might be like, okay, does that mean it has 5 people exactly? Like, where's the plus? It's inconsistent. It almost looks like a UI bug more so than how the UI is supposed to work. But I could also see why that would be a cleaner UI. So I don't know, I kind of went back and forth on this. I'm going to show you how you could potentially implement that. We're not going to go as far as like properly refactoring it into a view model and all that stuff, but I will show you the logic behind how you can do that. And then you can choose whether to implement it, refactor it, or leave it for the consistency. Even though it says +1, at least it will be consistent and not confusing. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that UI, how that would look. So let's actually, let me check out of Chipotle here. So that will be 5 people checked in, right? Okay, yep. So we want this +1 to just show a face, right? So the logic we can do here is a little convoluted. That's why I say I would definitely recommend like refactoring it out into a view model or something, because it is a bit confusing, but here's how I would write it. So we have 2 options, right? We either want to show the avatar view with the avatar or our additional profiles view. So let's tweak our logic to show this. So if index is less than or equal to 3, or index equals 4, and well, I'll put these in parentheses to make it obvious that these are grouped together. If index equals 4 and profiles.count equals 5. So what we're saying on this line, for index 0, 1, 2, 3, yeah, show the avatar view. Now on index 4, if profiles.count is equal to 5, meaning we have 5 people checked in exactly, then also show avatar view for, index 4. Now in the else, we need to add one thing. So else, if index equals 4 and profiles.count greater than 5, then show the additional profiles view with our count. So essentially we just added another case to this initial if to handle when there's exactly 5 people. And if there is exactly 5 people, we're not going to show the additional profiles view. We're just going to show another avatar view at index 4. If we're at index 4 and profiles.count is greater than 5, then for index 4, we want to show our additional profiles view. So when I run this, we should see our Chipotle not show our additional profiles view. We should just see all 5 avatars. Go to location list. There we go. See 5 avatars of people checked in. And then now let me check into Chipotle and it should change to +2. So I'm checked in. Again, I'll wait a second or two for CloudKit to index. Go back. Now I'm checked in and that switched to +2. Go back, check out, wait a couple seconds for it to index. Again, I know that's not the great behavior. We're going to implement a pull to refresh in iOS 15 when that comes out. Back to Grub Spots. If there's exactly 5 people, we don't show the plus. So again, this is where I think it could be confusing, because if AC Kitchen and Lounge showed 4 avatars plus 17, Grace's Deli showed 4 avatars plus 4, Mezcal showed 4 avatars and plus 15, but this one didn't have a plus, I don't know if it's obvious that that means there's exactly 5 people. Again, that is a subjective thing, but that would be my argument. So I actually wouldn't implement this, but just in case you want to implement it, that's how you would do it. And again, I would probably refactor this logic out a bit because it's a bit confusing. Okay, so I'm going to Command Z all that because again, I think it's a little confusing, but I wanted to show it to you. Now to wrap this up, we're actually going to go to our models a little bit. So again, jumping around, trying to squeeze things in where they kind of make sense. So our DDG location model, I'm going to talk about some of my bad coding habits, right? We all have bad coding habits, whether we learned something at one time and it just stuck with us. And I'm not immune to this either. So one of my bad habits is I tend to rely on functions more than like a computed property on stuff. So a perfect example of that is how I wrote create square image rather than having this be a property. And you'll see at the call site, it just feels cleaner when this is a property. So again, bad habit on my part. I need to work on fixing this. And of course, thanks to those that pointed this out, but I do agree this is much cleaner. Me relying on functions is just a bad habit I got to break. So let's update these. So I'm going to make this a var, and then it's not returning, a function anymore. It is of type UI image. So that is all we had to do. But now you'll see, well, let me fix this first, and then we'll go to the call site so we can see how this looks. So now this is a var. So now instead of func create square image, return a UI image, I actually don't want to say create because we're not doing that. It is just a property called square image and a property called banner image. So now we can do location.squareImage, location.bannerImage, rather than location.create square image with the parentheses at the end. You'll see how it looks cleaner. But that's all the changes we had to do. In fact, let me do that to the DDG profile because we're going to do that here as well. Same thing. Again, we'll say this is a var avatar image. I don't need these parentheses, and it's not returning a UI image. It is of type UI image, and then this all stays the same. So again, now we can do profile.avatarImage to get that. Now you'll see if I do a command B, I'm going to get a bunch of errors. This will tell me where I need to fix all this, and you'll start to see these call sites. So click on the little error. Yep, value of type location has no member create square image, because now I can just do location.squareImage and then get rid of those parentheses. And then do the same thing down here on profiles, right? Profiles does not create avatar image. It's just avatar image, and then get rid of those parentheses there. Command B. Okay, so this screen's good, but you can see how much cleaner that looks, right? And then same thing up here. Location.squareImage does look much cleaner. Again, it's just a bad habit I have that I tend to rely on functions more so. Okay, see, instead of profile create avatar image, just profile.avatar image. Bam, there we go. Much cleaner. Next one, same thing. Just a lot of cleanup. Location dot square image. Cool. I believe there's probably more here. Nope. I'll just keep going down the left hand side here. Okay. Not create avatar image, just avatar image. There we go. Nope. Don't delete the E. Command B. Nothing else here. Keep going down the list. Again, a little tedious, but again, I think this is worthwhile cleanup. I keep deleting the E on image. I don't like it. All right. Create banner image. Nope, now this is just banner image. There we go. It's because when you hit delete once, it deletes both parentheses. That's why I keep deleting the E. It doesn't delete one parenthesis at a time. Right, so like right when instead of hitting delete twice, I just have to hit delete once. Anyway, you don't care why I delete the E, but that's why. That's my case and I'm sticking to it. All right, so now I do Command B. Everything should work. Let's run it on the iPhone 12 Pro just to make sure our images are still showing up. Yep, there's our images here in location, images, cool. Okay, so we didn't break anything. So that was on our, DDG location and DDG profile. We can also do the same thing in our constants here in our image dimension, right? So again, I rely on this function called getPlaceholder. We pass in the dimension. We can actually make this a property on image dimension, and you'll see how we use this. So again, let's get rid of this static func, make it a var, just call it placeholder instead of getPlaceholder. And again, we don't have to pass in a dimension because we're calling it right on this dimension. And it is of type UI image. So you can already see how much cleaner it looks. So again, when our dimension, our dimension is going to be self, right? Because we're calling it right on this. And you'll see this in a second. But now we just call dimension.placeholder and it will, return square or banner depending on if the dimension is a square or a banner. So let's do a Command B because that's going to tell me where I was using this. Click on the error. Okay, here's where I was using it in the CK asset extension. So like I said, we're passing in a dimension. So I can just call dimension.placeholder. That's the property we just created. And again, I don't have to pass in, the dimension. So Command B, again, much cleaner. So clean, in fact, I don't think we need to have a placeholder variable. Because the reason I did that, if I do Command Z, was because I didn't want to have to type image dimension.getPlaceholder for dimension in all these places. However, Command Shift Z to redo everything. Now that it's just dimension.placeholder, I'm going to copy that. I'm fine just doing that, and then just getting rid of this line altogether. Okay, that wraps up the location list. Now, oh man, the location detail view, the mess that we have going on here. I've been waiting to refactor this. It's finally time. This might be, I'm not sure yet, it might be multiple videos because I don't want this to be like one long 45-minute video. Might break it up into multiple videos, but I've been waiting to tackle this for a while. Hopefully we can get it looking nice and clean and good to go. So let's keep it moving.